following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Sometimes in a season of V8 Supercar racing, you come to some real gems of circuits. Sometimes you come to tracks that really turn it on in terms of the racing, in terms of the drama, in terms of the opportunities for massive outbraking, slipstreaming challenge, and out-and-out bravery. This is one of them. The Autodromo Nazionale Monza in the north of Italy. This is round 10 of the Virtual Racing School V8 Supercar Online Premier Series. Live, of course, on the iRacing Esports Network. We are V8s Online. My name is Reese Gardiner. Joining me in the commentary box, Bo Albert. Bo, Monza. Fantastic track, especially in touring cars that are 1.5 tons with 650 horses under the bonnet.
Absolutely. It's one of those circuits that really suits this car, isn't it? And just mixed in with the massive braking zones we've got here. The run into turn 1 is one of the most exciting ones we have all season, and that's compounded by some more famous corners, Parabolica, Ascari, the Lesmos. This circuit has a bit of everything, and we've seen the races in the past have been absolutely stunning, and we always tend to get a bit of excitement right down to the last few meters to the start-finish line.
Yeah, we certainly do. This track, it's an incredibly old one. It's got some major challenge to it. And to go into some of that history, this almost 100-year history of this historic and fantastic venue, let's have a look at the fact file. In the high, mountainous north of Italy, there is located one of those venues that is a reference point in world motorsports. It is one of a select few circuits that has seen action in both the pre-war and post-war eras of Grand Prix racing and has been a symbol of speed and danger for almost a century. The Autodromo Nazionale Monza boasts one of the highest average speeds of any non-oval racetrack and contains heavy braking zones and minimal runoff. Power, low downforce, slipstreaming, and bravery are the ingredients required for success at this circuit. Monza's story begins in the far-off, murky age of the 1920s. The Automobile Club of Milan celebrated its 25th anniversary in January 1922, and to commemorate the occasion, it was decided that a racetrack be built in the city of Monza. It was also noted that Italy needed a testing ground for new automotive technologies, and the local economy would get a much-needed boost. Not only that, but the Italian Grand Prix would gain a permanent home from which to compete with the popular French Grand Prix. The initial design for the track was penned by architect Alfredo Rosselli. Rosselli envisioned a huge 14-kilometre facility with a high-speed oval and road course side by side. But soon after construction started, the project was halted for fear that it would destroy the surrounding parkland. The design was then condensed to the first iteration of the circuit as we know it. It was completed in only 110 days, with 3,500 workers contributing, and officially opened on September 3rd, 1922. This made Monza only the third permanent motor racing track ever built, after Brooklands and Indianapolis. The next 20 years were marked by many layout changes. For a time, only the oval was used for Grands Prix, and then a combined track called the Florio circuit was used. In 1938, another layout was put in place as part of a site redevelopment, demolishing the then existing oval. And then, just a year after, war struck, and the track was left to deteriorate. The facility was used for vehicle storage during the Second World War, and following the victory of the Allies, a parade of tanks was held on the start-finish straight, destroying the existing surface. As normality resumed around Europe, so too did racing activities. Monza was resurfaced and became part of the new World Drivers' Championship in 1950. In 1955, the oval was rebuilt with higher banking, and the Parabolica was created, the most iconic layout of Monza entering operation. This layout saw use throughout the 50s and 60s, but as cars became faster and more volatile, the glaring safety issues became apparent, and racing left the oval by 1970. Thus began Monza as we know it today. Over the next few decades, in response to crashes and deaths at the track, chicanes were gradually introduced. In response to the deaths of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger at Imola in 1994, major works took place as Curva Grande and the Lesmo turns were moved inwards to create more runoff. By 2000, with the Variante Rettifiglio reconfigured to a tight right-left complex, Monza assumed its current form. Though its position as a Formula One venue has been under threat in recent years, Monza is still an enduring symbol of Italian motorsports and remains one of the most iconic racetracks in the world. The VRS V8 Supercar Online Premier Series visited Monza for the first time in 2015. Lap 1, Turn 1 is rarely boring for drivers or spectators thanks to the tight first chicane, and the long straights give these powerful cars plenty of room to stretch their legs. Look for slipstreaming and outbraking maneuvers throughout the field, quite a few with explosive results. The V8 Supercar Online Premier Series at Monza is one of the best spectacles I think you will ever see in organised online sim racing, and it's happening right here, right now. That was the history of this venue, but now, Bo, we come to the racing for tonight. Super Split 2, a 20-lap race ahead of us for the bottom 40 guys who made the cut for this round. And I'll tell you what, Monza being the high-speed circuit that it is, we've seen some pretty major dropping of rear ride heights, haven't we?
Yeah, we absolutely have. It's a real technical challenge to set these cars up for this circuit. And one of the things these drivers are trying to do is just get the airflow over the car as nice as they can, which involves dropping the rake at the rear of the car. And we can just see just how low some of them are running. And so much so that iRacing has a little bit of a issue with the tires just popping a little bit out of the sidewalls, so that's not actually happening to the cars itself, but under load it's just a little error with iRacing. But nonetheless, it's a real setup challenge, and the drivers really having to adjust to a very different handling V8 Supercar, because in the corners such as the Lesmos, which a lot of drivers heading towards now, including Daryl Carter for Fusion Sim Racing, it really loads the car up in a unique way, and the car just wants to push so much more, and you can see they're getting into the gravel just because the car is different to anywhere else they would drive it at.
Yeah, certainly. Daryl Carter currently sitting fourth in the session, and Fusion Sim Racing's newest signing only got him this week, and this is going to be his first appearance for that team. But you can see he's reaching a top speed of just almost touching 270 kilometers an hour on the run up to Ascari. The car getting incredibly unbalanced over those curbs. And of course, you can use all of that AstroTurf on the exit of the chicanes without getting an off-track penalty, which results in some incredible exits onto these straights. And then, of course, we've got the braking down for Parabolica, braking just before the 100-meter mark, actually. And the exit to this corner, Bo, I think is one of the hardest parts of the circuit, as Mr. Carter is definitely finding out.
Yeah, that was a perfect illustration, wasn't it? Because the car is constantly loaded through that Parabolica, but at the same time, you're just trying to get that throttle on just a little bit earlier than the driver in front of you. So you get a lot of sideways moments out of there, and it can really make or break your opportunities into turn one, which is such a hard braking zone as well. So Parabolica is so crucial, not just for racing as well, but when we come to qualifying, because that is a long straight and so much time can be made or lost.
Yeah, certainly. Corner exit in general is the most important thing around here. And this turn that Carter's going through now, Curva Grande, in most cars, it's basically a nothing corner now, unfortunately, because of the first chicane, obviously being as slow as it is. But in these cars, it is one hell of a challenge. And Carter actually taking an interesting line and having to do a slowdown penalty through the Della Roggia chicane. You've got to be careful not to cut those corners.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if you do cut those corners a bit too much, the entire car will tell you about it because it will not react nicely at all. You'll probably go flying and very easily either pick up damage, you can pick up a slowdown, or you can just lose a lot of time and make yourself vulnerable to any cars that are in close proximities. But in order to really maximize the circuit, you have to be willing to go for those curbs. You have to go for every millimeter, but unfortunately, just a few inches to the left of every one of these curbs are sleeping policemen or sausage curbs, whatever name you have for them, and they can do a lot of damage very quickly.
Yeah, they certainly can. They can absolutely wreck the floor of your car and destroy whatever straight line speed advantage you would have. And talking about the runs that could potentially be ruined, I'm noticing coming through Curva Grande, Greg Sharp and Oakley Druitt are drawing up together, and I think this is a big illustration of the kind of racing that we'll see at Monza. Oakley going incredibly deep into the Della Roggia chicane for Tempo Motorsports, but up in front, Greg Sharp for Stealth Synforce holding his own in that position at the moment. He's currently in 25th on the timesheet, so 1 minute 50.821, and one little slip up on corner exit could bring him right into Druitt's hands. And as you can see behind Druitt, Jacob Knight is starting to use that slipstream to his advantage. So the drivers aren't racing just yet. Practice session just drawing to a close, but this is a very good opportunity for them to have one more little look at how hard they can race around here.
Yeah, absolutely, because of course, if you're up underneath the rear wing of the car in front, you're going to lose a little bit of pace through the corners. You're not quite going to have the same amount of grip, but equally, you do want to be close because like you were saying, the slipstream around here is so crucial to lap speed, straight line speed, and getting an overtake done. And also, it's going to be very vital in qualifying as well. So drivers want to test out how close they can be to a car in what areas, because you don't want to be close in some areas, you do want to be close in others.
Yeah, certainly. And Oakley Druitt finding out that the pressure coming out of Parabolica can certainly mess you up. But fortunately, pit entry is right there. And the pits at Monza, they're certainly something to talk about as well. Very difficult to get your braking right for the entry. Yep,
absolutely. And it's a very tough entry into that, like you were saying, because it's a 64 km/h pit lane speed, so it's very, very slow in comparison to the exit speed they're taking out of Parabolica, and you have to jump on the brakes. The car is still slightly loaded because the pit entry is right on the corner exit, so the car is not safe at all. And we see Reece Goldfinch there having a bit of a moment just as we're talking about it. So it's such a hard thing to achieve, and a lot of drivers just testing the limits out, which they have to do because there will be a pit stop in this one.
Yep, there certainly will, and it's only a 20-lap sprint otherwise, so this race is certainly going to go off. And those chicanes, the braking zones for the chicanes, you got to watch out for those, particularly on lap one. Monza, in other sim racing circles, especially on public servers, it tends to have a bit of a reputation as a bit of a crash fest circuit. because drivers will always fire it up the inside into the chicanes, and it's so narrow through there as well, especially through the first chicane. It's really hard to find a spot on the opening lap, so it could make or break your race.
Absolutely, and over the past, we have seen some incidents there, unfortunately. I remember last year, we did have drivers upside down at the chicane as well, just on the opening lap, just from how close everyone's running and what a tight space it is. But as a driver, you have to go for those opportunities sometimes, and drivers will be willing to risk it. But on this opening lap, you do have to play it a bit safe, because if you don't, you might have to cut the chicane entirely, get yourself a slowdown, and that's going to hurt a whole lot more than gaining maybe 1 or 2 spots.
Yeah, certainly. And of course, those long straight line sections, the slowdown penalty is the last thing you want around a circuit like this. 10 seconds left in the session before we go into the race. There's no qualifying session for Split 2, Super Split 2, as our friend Mr. Sperry has taken to calling it. The grid is set by how the drivers set their times in pre-qualifying. So, jumping into this 20-lap race session, we're going to have a look at the grid for Super Split 2 here at Monza. Starting from position 1 will be Chris Coxhead, Bradley Rattu starting in position 2. Ryan Jones in 3rd with Kyle Stokes in 4th. Craig Jones starting from 5th place. Matt Muggleton and David Kinmond up taking the next row. Warren Pickering in 8th place, and 9th, Mitchell Bales. Rounding out the top 10, Stephen Lattimore.
Kicking things off from P number 11 will be Joshua Burden, with Steve Jansen joining him on the 6th row of the grid. Tyler Blackburn in 13th, with Daryl Carter and Brenton O'Brien, your top 15. Greg Sharp and Damon Mulqueen in 16th and 17th, with David Lord, Martin Silvassi, and Simon Pitt, your top 20.
Just rounding through the rest of the field as we take a look at the grid. Very short grid time in Super Split 2, so unfortunately we won't have time to go through absolutely everybody by name, but you can see them going by on your screen right now. The minute is up, and now Chris Coxhead, he's going to have to absolutely nail this start if he wants to get a run into turn 1. The rev's rising, and the green flag flies, and Chris Coxhead did not get the best start. He was actually rolling backwards on his spot. That's allowed Bradley Rattu to get ahead, and he's going to actually go for the move here into turn 1 as the field jostles behind them. Bradley Rattu nailing the brakes there, but the drama will surely soon start. It's almost a traffic jam as they go through turn 1 for the first time. Tyler Blackburn with issues. Hasn't lost too much though. And have a look at the run Josh Burden has around the outside of Curva Grande. Oh, they touch. A little bit of a touch between him and David Kinmond. And so problems already for a few drivers throughout the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And a few having to get on the brakes as well, just to avoid contact as they make their way into the second chicane. A few getting a bit optimistic already on the brakes as they all try and sort themselves out single file. 2 of the Fusion Sim Racing cars side by side, almost touch as well. And that's Warren Pickering that's left a little bit out of sync now and causes a bit of a hiccup. And he's got a slowdown actually, so he's trying to give that up just a bit as Brenton O'Brien is just behind, and it looks like he's going to be able to get out of the way just about and falls back to single file, which is what you need to do on this first lap. You don't want to get too aggressive, just find your rhythm, and it looks like a lot of the field are mostly doing it with not too much drama.
Yeah, looking at Kyle Stokes and Craig Jones running 3rd and 4th. Kyle Stokes actually getting overtaken by Ryan Jones there, and Matt Muggleton is looking a little bit frisky. Kyle Stokes just touching the grass onto the exit of the back straight, so that's going to put paid to whatever run he would have gotten. But up the front, it looks like Chris Coxhead and Brad Rattu have not left each other in the dust yet.
No, absolutely not. And with the slipstream effect, these two may as well be locked together the entire race, as well as this entire front pack of about 5 cars, all the way back down to Matt Muggleton as well. So they're going to be locked together for this entire 20-lap sprint. As you can see the slipstream effect as they head towards turn number 1. It's on for the race lead, as Coxhead has to do this around the outside. Whoa. But it's going to get a bit tight as contact is made. Yep. Sideways to 208, just about holds onto it, and he is very lucky to get away with that. Ratchet gets a bit of a gap now, but it's on for 3rd as well.
Yeah, certainly is. Ryan Jones and Kyle Stokes, these guys have been battling for the last lap or so, and Stokes will probably have a good run coming into the chicane here, but they got Chris Coxhead to contend with as well, trying to find some space on track. Ryan Jones going where the only place that he'd really be able to in that race on Oz, Holden, Commodore, and Coxhead just getting away from him. So Brad Ratu, with that incident at the chicane with Mr. Coxhead, has gotten a good gap up the front, but he's got no slipstream, no safety net to ensure that he can keep that lead. I'm sure Coxhead's going to be right on the back of him very, very soon. But behind Jones, Kyle Stokes and Matt Muggleton drawing up to him. Craig Jones getting in on this, as well as we're seeing Damon Mulqueen is off. That was just on the exit of Lesmo too. 3 wide, yeah, just behind him. Stuart Crawford finding his way through. Oh, goodness me. Shane Rayner trying to look for some space between Grant Claines and Martin Silvassi. Oh, just almost going for the move on Silvassi, but Martin going a little wide there as well. Through Ascari, it's very difficult to get a good run onto the straight, and Chad Hearn just behind them. His run has been completely ruined. That's going to allow Reese Goldfinch through.
Yeah, absolutely. So Goldfinch looks to get this done before Parabolica, so job done for him. And that's what I was saying before, as those drivers cannot afford to get too close to one another, as it might just well be on for our race lead once again. Coxhead with a great run, having to go around the outside once again though, but will not even commit to the move this time around. Learnt from his past mistakes and realizes that there's still 18 laps left in this race. Plenty of time to make this move happen, as Matt Muggleton in the background does not mind getting the slide on.
No, certainly not, but that's going to ruin his run and allow Craig Jones to get up onto the back of him. So almost losing that slipstream behind Stokes et al. No moves going on up the front here into the chicane.
We have some cars off of turn 1, sorry. Stuart Crawford is one of those cars involved, spun to the infield, and that was all caused actually by another driver, Grant Caines, spinning it on the inside, and unfortunately, there was just nowhere for Crawford to go.
Oh, that is a real shame. We got a CPR kart parts replay up on the screen for you now. That is a real shame. It's quite easy to spin the wheels up coming out of turn 2. As meanwhile, Stokes and Muggleton change of position between those guys, and it looks like Stokes is actually having a few issues. Craig Jones now right onto the back of him, as Matt Muggleton actually making a mistake just ahead into Ascari. These guys in a race situation. Oh, no, there we go. That's a spin, and that's going to be contact. Matt Muggleton off and into the wall. So he's going to have to get going pretty soon, but he doesn't want to make too rash of a decision, because there are cars going by him at very high speeds there. Remember, a no escape rule in V8SCOPS, so he can't simply escape and go back to the pits. He would have to ask permission from race control if his car was in a poor enough state, but he's managed to get going. So Matt Muggleton, that will absolutely hurt. He was fighting for a top 5, and now his race is pretty much done from that perspective. On for the lead again, though. Brad Ratu versus Chris Coxhead versus Ryan Jones. Now, we got to move just behind them. Craig Jones and Kyle Stokes. Jones, I think, took a little too much curve there, and he's going to have to slow down. Yeah, so he's going to lose a bunch of positions. Oh, goodness me. David Himmond and Daryl Carter are going to have to contend with him now. Jones just letting that slow down clear. Oh, goodness me. That's not going to be good for him. He's probably going to lose another position here. Oh, hang on a minute. He's going to defend against Bales, and Warren Pickering having a front row seat to all of this. He's probably going to get a good advantage from this. Bales with a run ruined, and Pickering's going to have to go to the outside here around the Lesmos. You can't make a move there in that particular position, but goodness me, it's all going off here at the moment, and these drivers, I believe, still have a pit stop to go.
Absolutely. We're only just kicking off into this race, and already there's lots of drama happening, drivers chopping and changing, but at this stage in the race, you have to be careful with those slowdowns. You can't afford when they hurt so much, as Bales now gets side by side with the driver. That's the CMR car of Craig Jones up the inside. Jones tries to hang tough on the outside, now gets the inside and will get it as the Fusion Sim Racing car of Warren Pickering tries to get involved. Gets a bit of a slide on the exit, so probably won't have the run on Bales, but is tucked right underneath the rear wing as they head to Parabolica. So we'll see if he does commit to the move. But it Bales better not to fight it too much. Bales defends this on the inside and should get this pretty easily defended. But because he's had to defend into the corner, he's probably not going to have the best run. So any chance of attacking Craig Jones this time around, completely ruined. But Pickering with a fantastic run.
Yeah, certainly. Pickering being stuck on the outside into Parabolica, it means he was able to go for that late apex and get a good run. It hasn't translated into a big run down the straight as they've reached VMAX in these cars down the front stretch, but he's got the inside for the chicane, and Bales will see him there and give him the requisite room. Oh, a little bit of contact, and Pickering with a small slide, but these guys are still running side by side coming through Curva Grande, and this is going to be one of the major spots where it's yield or commit. Oh, a little bit of contact there, and Pickering's off. Oh, that is a huge smash right into the wall. And that right there is what Curva Grande can do to two V8 supercars.
A horrible accident there, and Warren Pickering, I think, just barely got collected by one of the redback cars as well, so not ideal at all. He will continue to bring it home to the pit lane, but that was a monster accident, and that is a lot of cars damaged, especially for Pickering.
Yeah, certainly is. Goodness me, it's Pickering just trying to go to the outside of Curva Grande to maybe defend the entry to Della Roggia, but, well, he was still there, unfortunately, was Bales. So Pickering, now it looks like his engine is completely gone, so this may very well be race over for Warren Pickering. That's a real shame for him as we look at the pack behind Greg Sharp now in car number 747. That's Brenton O'Brien behind him, the manager of Evolution Racing Team. And behind him, Tyler Blackburn and Jacob Knight getting very up close and personal coming into Parabolica. Also, Gary Cooper and Josh Burden battling very hard. So the cars are starting to spread out into their own little battle packs at the moment as draft is lost and gained all throughout the field. Burden with a run on Cooper now in car 4. Let's see if he can pull off what Pickering was unfortunately not able to. Burden, goodness me, he's going for the late lunge there as they reach the end of the braking zone, but Gary Cooper very well defended there. Burden may have a good run there, though, as Tyler Blackburn and Jacob Knight, again, were side by side. Knight through 100% there, fighting the rear end all the way through Curva Grande.
Yeah, extremely hard in these conditions at the moment with a 32-degree track, and that's only going to get hotter with 34 V8 supercars on track. It's not the easiest corner, and a car will definitely dance around, especially in these low downforce configurations everyone's running. So it's extremely tight. We do have a fight happening for 4th and 5th, which is even tighter as well, as Carl Stokes is having to really defend from Steve Jansen, who's got a nice run, going to pull out of the slipstream now as they fight their way to Ascari. And this is not a corner you want to fight too hard side by side, so we'll see how it goes. And Stokes, so late on the brakes, around the outside, manages to clear Jansen entirely. So a good defensive driving there, but will he have the exit as they fight their way now down this long straight towards Parabolica? And we have two drivers both getting very feisty behind them, back of another car, as Carter also having to fight just behind the driver of David Kinman as well. But it's going to be side by side for both of them. Contact is made, and Stokes gets punted all the way to the outside, and it's going to go all the way to the back of the train. Just a little bit of wiggle there, just trying to see if the car is steering straight. And looks like they're all going to go side by side once again down this long straight. Kinman going to get past the driver in the CMR car as well. And I think he might be redressing that on the brakes on the straight as well. They're all checking up just a little bit as they now fight their way into turn number 1. And we'll see who comes out on top in this one. It looks like it's going to be Kinman from Carter. So that has completely changed from how they went to Parabolic.
Yeah, certainly. And that incident between Jansen and Stokes looks to me like Jansen there is redressing the position. Just a little bit of contact at the apex of Parabolica sent Carl Stokes way off, and now Jansen, his run down that straight has been absolutely destroyed. He's had to give up another spot to his teammate Craig Jones. So, meanwhile, the leaders still on. Fantastic battle, three-way battle going on lap 7 of this 20-lap race. Brad Ratu still holding his own from Chris Coxhead, but Ryan Jones is a threat looming in the background. We'll see what they can do from here. No moves into Ascari. I think these guys have recognized now that it's still a bit too early in the race to be pulling off hero moves at Ascari. But They're going to definitely be looking to get more aggressive in the later stages of the race. The guys behind them, on the other hand, David Kinmond looks to have his rearview mirrors filled with orange as Daryl Carter is going to try and go around the outside here at Parabolica. Will he be able to do it? Side by side once again behind them. Kyle Stokes going side by side with a CMR car once again, but Craig Jones does not make contact. And Chris Coxhead actually going for the pits, as are a few other guys. Kyle Stokes following him in as well. So this is an interesting strategy call to get out of the battle, but you would want to go into the pits with someone, Bo, surely, to get that draft.
Yeah, that's what I would think, and I'm also surprised by Coxhead's call, considering he was actually in the draft of Bradley Ratu as well. So we'll see how much he was fuel saving in that first stop, potentially a much shorter stop than Bradley's, well, when Bradley does eventually come in. But I thought these top three in particular really would have waited quite a bit. And what this has enabled is that Bradley actually is out of the slipstream of Ryan Jones as well. So we'll see how Ryan plays into this as well when he does his pit stop. So this early call by Chris Coxhead could really shake up this top three as he makes his way into turn one.
Yeah, certainly. Chris Coxhead has come out with no one around him. He is absolutely alone in terms of draft. Kyle Stokes is there behind him, so tell you what, it will be interesting to see how this works out for Coxhead, because coming into the pits, he was sitting pretty in a draft. He could have saved a bit of fuel, but now he's going to have to wait at least an entire lap before he can draft anybody, get a bit of extra pace. Just up ahead, though, I'm looking at P25 or so. Grant Keynes battling with Stuart Crawford. And Keynes actually went off track a little bit through the Lesmo turns, so he looks to be in a little bit of trouble in that Inviso-sponsored Redback Racing Commodore. Redback have certainly distanced themselves, I think, from their name as Ratu goes into the pits, with their cars sporting some interesting new sponsor liveries.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got to say, though, that Invisio one is actually one of my absolute favorites. I think it's beautiful, and obviously I'm a fan of the blue, so really liking that paint scheme. And like you were saying, they've had a lot of really nice schemes, so Redback doing some great work in the paint department at the moment. And I'm sure the results will be coming for that team as well very soon. We've seen some very strong drives, even in split one for those guys. But we will just see how this pit stop does shake out for our race leaders, because for Chris Coxhead's pit stop, as he comes out of Parabolica, it was quite slow in regards to everyone else. So where he comes out in regards to Brad Ratu is going to be very interesting, as Ratu already off the pit speed limiter and is heading towards turn number one. And even though Coxhead has a lot more speed, he's going to easily come out in front still.
Yeah, certainly. So I suppose that ploy by Coxhead was all for naught, if it was a ploy. I mean, we can't see into the drivers' heads. We don't know what they're thinking, planning out the race ahead of them. But it looks to me like, if anything, Chris Coxhead has lost ground to Ratu, as Grant Keynes just lifts off to let these guys go.
Yeah, exactly. So it hasn't been completely great for Coxhead, has it? And now he's got Grant Keynes just in front of him as well, and he hasn't stopped yet. So this is definitely hurting Coxhead a lot more. And I'm looking at Ryan Jones' pace at the moment, who is our current race leader, yet to pit, and he was involved in that top three fight. And he's just been struggling a little bit and actually being reeled in by Daryl Carter as well. So that timed pit stop might work out really, really well for Brad Ratu in the regards to this final result of the race.
Yeah, certainly could. And Ryan Jones going for his pit stop now. So we'll see what happens there. Carter is going to stay out, as is David Kinmond, but going for the pits also Craig Jones. So these guys taking their stops now. Looks like Joshua Burden staying out as well. So Fusion Sim Racing, one of the teams that's decided to leave their stops for later. Ryan Jones coming to a stop. Now, where are our effective race leaders at the moment? Coming out of Parabolica. So we'll see what Ryan Jones can do here. I get the feeling that he may... Yeah, he'll come out a fair distance behind them here. So Coxhead and Ratu already way by him, and the top three incredibly spread out now due to those stops.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised by that. I thought they would have been a little bit closer, but we do have to bear in mind though that they do have slightly different tyre lives, and whilst tyres isn't the biggest factor at Monza, it is still a lot more bite out of the slow corners like turn number 1 and also the second chicane as well. So it is still worth something to have newer tyres around this circuit. So it's not the be all or end all for these top three at the moment, but Ratu definitely has a nice advantage. But still, the driver Chris Coxhead is not far behind at all. So any little mistakes, any slowdowns for Ratu is going to bring Coxhead right back into this fight. So the pressure is still well and truly on out front.
Yes, certainly. That's what Coxhead needs to focus on. He needs to focus on getting that pressure up, because when you don't have much of a chance of catching up to a guy and passing them with any ease, it's a lot easier to, see if you can try and set some quick times, if you can move around in their mirrors a little bit, maybe distract them. That's what the key is a lot of the time to getting these moves done, especially in a series as competitive as the VRS V8 SCOPS is. It's forcing your opponents into a mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can't pass them on track, the pit strategy is always a great way to get past. But also, like you're saying, the pressure on another driver. There's so many factors you can use to get past another driver or make positions in this series. And it's very cutthroat, so you have to use every one of them to make any progress in this series. So the driver that comes out on top of this race in the end will well and truly have to have weathered all kinds of storms to make this race a victory. So we'll see how these top few guys go, and we'll see if Ratu can indeed handle the pressure, because last time around, near identical laps for the top two.
Yes, indeed. Just behind them, though, I'm looking at Brenton O'Brien and Jacob Knight. Knight with a huge draft run on O'Brien. These guys have been close together for the last few laps as drivers coming out of the pits around them. Brenton O'Brien going majorly defensive there in the braking zone, and he's overcooked it. So that is a half spin for Brenton O'Brien, and Jacob Knight will be completely untroubled. But now O'Brien's got Gary Cooper and Joshua Burden for very close company.
Yep, and that's not what you want, especially after a little bit of a mistake. You want a bit of breathing room just to get your head down and regroup and whatnot. But Brenton O'Brien is not going to have that opportunity, because he has Gary Cooper looking up the inside, but it decides just to sit behind for another couple of corners. So gives Brenton a little bit of a chance to get his head back down. And Brenton has been on a really strong run of form lately. He has been getting a bit of coaching by top split driver Ethan Gregault. So Brenton trying to use that new experience to his advantage. But at the moment, Gary Cooper well and truly putting him under the pump. As also Josh Burden dives into this, and they're all getting a little bit too close for comfort, as Cooper does not get the run he would have wanted. And Josh Burden is going to inch little bit by little bit, just a bit closer as they head towards this scurry corner. We'll see if Burden decides to commit to this or just let this position go. It's not the place you want to be on the outside, but he's got to hang tough for now, but eventually just slides back into single file.
Yes, indeed. And Gary Cooper, I think, was a little overzealous in his pursuit of Brenton there. Just braked a little too late for Lesmo too, and that's what allowed Burden to get the run on him. So these guys have been battling for a fair portion of the race, and it looks like it's going to be going on for a very long time to come. Meanwhile, our effective leaders, they look to still be very far apart from each other.
Well, Coxhead actually, sorry to cut across you, but Coxhead actually with the fastest lap of the race last time around. He's on a mission.
Very true. Wow. 49.6 versus 49.8 for Bradley Ratu. And this is what I was talking about. It's the pressure. Bradley Ratu will know the times that his opponents are setting to know what he has to do. How much life is in those tires? How much car does Ratu have to try and finish this race with a good margin over Coxhead? We're not quite sure, but we're past the halfway point now, and time is rapidly running out for Ratu to defend and Coxhead to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. But, 8 laps, that's a lot of braking zones. It's a lot of throttle applications. And that's a lot of laps for those tyres to wear down just a little bit and the pressure to sink in. So this is still well and truly on. And if Coxhead can just get a couple more tenths closer, I believe the slipstream range for these V8 Supercars is about 1.1, 1.3 seconds. So if he can just get a little bit more, this fight for the win is still well and truly on between our top two, as Kimmin and Silvassi still yet to pick. Kimmin's going to continue for another lap. Silvassi going to come down this time around, but that's a very strong effort on one set of tyres, even around Monza.
Yeah, certainly is. We'll see what David Kimmin can do from here. He started in position 7, so if he can gain something by going for this long stint, that'd be a really good strategy play from him. Meanwhile, down in the field, update on the Burden-Cooper-O'Brien battle. Cooper and Burden managed to get by O'Brien, and it looks to me as though Brenton O'Brien has had yet more issues because he's fallen behind Stephen Lattimore as they come into Parabolica for the 12th time.
Yeah, so I'm actually not too sure what's happened to Brenton there, but we did see him struggle into turn 1 previously, so perhaps just not comfortable with the braking performance of his car at the moment as he heads down this long front straight with Matt Muggleton closing a bit by bit. Brenton, of course, has the slipstream of the car in front, but Muggleton definitely looks like he's getting the best of it at the moment. Brenton just moving a little bit to the right, but will be safe into turn 1 as Silvassi is going to emerge just in front of this battle, in front of Lattimore, who gets a bit sideways. O'Brien almost stuck his nose in there, didn't do it, backed out, and almost got a nice run out of this corner as well, but not able to get the run on Lattimore. But that's just how close these battles can be, especially once you come out of the pit lane. But Ryan Jones now, who was running quite comfortably in third, is not comfortable at all anymore, Reese.
No, certainly not. Daryl Carter in hot pursuit of him now. Carter, last lap, the fastest lap of the race, 49.579, so he is a man certainly on a mission. And Ryan Jones, once again, his rearview mirrors are full of orange, and Carter looking very good here for a top 4, if not a podium, if he can get by Ryan Jones. But Jones looks to me like he's responding pretty well to Carter. Carter made a few little mistakes over this lap, but he does have a very good run coming into Parabolica. Ryan Jones staying squarely in the middle of the circuit. It's actually not too bad of a line if you're trying to defend into Parabolica, but you see there the gap opens on the exit, and this is going to allow Carter through. Have a look at the exit that Daryl Carter's got. That is magnificent to see. And Ryan Jones is going to go side by side with him now. Will he be able to defend into turn 1? We've seen quite a few drivers try it. Brenton O'Brien with his half spin, and other drivers not exactly having a good time of it. But he's going to have a red hot go, isn't he? Oh, he's actually almost held his own there, but Carter, with the traction, is going to get the move done. That was beautiful and clean from both of those guys. Good to see.
Yeah, that was really good racing, especially into that first chicane, which can be so tricky. You have seen so many incidents over the years and seasons here at Monza, but those two did it just about perfectly, and they keep it nice and close. As Bales now finds himself in yet another fight, and that this time it's involved with David Kimmin jumping onto the brakes, and Kimmin fresh out of the pit lane. He's on brand new tyres, the newest of the field, and you can see the braking performance that gives him, and easily gets past as Bales actually, I think, serving a slowdown or just didn't quite get the run right through that second chicane. But Kimmin now with easily the freshest tyres in the entire field. Let's see what kind of charge he can go on, as he has the driver of Craig Jones just in front with 4 lap holder tyres.
Yes, indeed. That was a magnificent lunge by David Kinman into the second chicane. So I will be interested to see what he can do on these new tyres. But of course, tyres aren't the only thing that will get you pace at Monza. It's draft as well. So it's up to Kinman to try and get into draft range of the drivers ahead of him. And if he eventually passes Jones, he's going to have a huge gap to Kyle Stokes up ahead. So I think this position that Jones currently occupies might be the best that Kinman can hope for now.
Yeah, it does look like that way, but of course, you never know what can happen in these SCOPS races. We've seen all kinds of dramas, so you've got to make sure you get yourself in the best position and always fight your way to the finish line, just in case any opportunities do come your way. But Kinman out of the Parabolica now, getting himself into the slipstream. I don't think he's going to have perhaps a chance at turn 1, but Craig Jones definitely thinks he will, as he goes defensive quite early and eventually moves off the defensive line, gives Kimman the inside with some fantastic straight line speed, but doesn't quite commit. Probably could have pushed that one a bit harder, but he might just do this on the exit anyway, as they go side by side heading towards the Curva Grande. And it looks like Kinman will be able to win this one pretty easily, as Craig Jones forced to go the long way and with a bit of damage on his car too.
Yeah, but he's also got a really good run through the middle of Curva Grande as well. And he's going to try and get back at Kinman here. Kinman a little over to the inside, but Jones just squeezing through, not without a little bit of biffo, and instantly lets him back by. So Mitchell Bales in this as well. This is a proper three-car battle we've got here, ladies and gentlemen. And Mitchell Bales and Craig Jones through Lesmo 1. Excellent racing going on here at the moment. Can Jones get the over-under? No, he can't. Just not able to hook up the throttle on the exit. And now Steve Jansen is coming into this as well. So Kinman just left these guys behind, but they are continuing that three-car battle through to Ascari. I get the feeling that Jansen won't pressure Jones as much, considering that they are teammates, but they'll definitely try and make this a two-pronged attack against Bales, who gets a little loopy coming off of Ascari.
Yeah, I would not want to be Mitchell Bales right now for two reasons. One, he has two CMR cars behind. Number two, that car does not look comfortable through the exit of Ascari. So Bales really having to work at the moment with Jones and Jansen closing rapidly. But his only saving grace is they do look like they both have a little bit of damage, which can be so painful down these straights. So we'll see if Bales has any kind of saving grace as we head to 5 laps to go for these guys. And we'll just wait and see if they can make any attack over the next few laps.
Yes, indeed. Behind them, meanwhile, it looks like Josh Burden has started catching back up to Gary Cooper, which is very interesting. Burden just under a tenth faster as they go 3 wide on the front straight. Oh, goodness me. 2 Redback cars and Brenton O'Brien. That's Lionel Stapleton and Stephen Varga. Can O'Brien sneak up the inside of Lionel? He certainly can, and goes right on through. And this is actually a proper huge battle pack at the moment. We got Simon Pitt and Matt Muggleton in this as well.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused if this is Daytona or Monza at the moment, but this is a fantastic fight between these guys. And shades of Ricardo, Zonta, Hacken, and Schumacher at Spa with that kind of move into turn 1. Unfortunately, they're going to play it a bit safer into the second chicane, sorry. And they're all just going to go single file, but this is definitely a battle to keep an eye on because these guys are playing for keeps over this position 15.
Yes, indeed. O'Brien doing very well to get by Stapleton there. And the 2 Redback cars, they were running pretty well there. Linus Stern mostly, but they were having a little battle of their own, which may have played a part in getting them into this battle. But you can see that Varga definitely has the best pace out of everyone here. He's definitely starting to gap these guys, but Stapleton and O'Brien will certainly begin a drafting battle at the moment. Stapleton a little more assertive under brakes into Ascari, but it looks like O'Brien will hook up the exit very nicely. Meanwhile, Muggleton and Pitt, I think a move is definitely on here into Parabolica.
Yeah, I most definitely think it is. So we'll wait and see as Muggleton is actually a lap down as well. So just creating a bit of drama.
Oh, contact! Well, contact O'Brien! Goodness me, so that has forced Simon Pitt to go onto the grass. Lionel Stapleton just giving him a little bit of a tap in the side, and Stapleton is immediately lifting off to give O'Brien the position back. So Matt Muggleton, I think, in a very awkward position here as a lapped car in the middle of 3 drivers who are battling very hard. Meanwhile, the gap at the front is under a second. This is crucial, Bo, because it means Coxhead is now in draft range.
Yep, absolutely. Down to 0.8 of a second, and Coxhead has absolutely flown on this last lap, taking 0.9 of a second out. So surely just a little bit of an error somewhere for Brad Ratu, and the pressure slowly beginning to mount now because you can see on the straight, the gap's coming down. It's now 0.7. And as we head to 2 of the longest straights on this circuit, out of Ascari and after Parabolica as well, that gap is only going to get smaller and smaller. So if Ratu thought he was going to have a very comfortable last 3 laps, he has got it all wrong, as this is going to be one heck of a showdown.
Yeah, certainly is. Ratu, remember, with a tiny bit of damage to his front left quarter, so he may have some aero issues preventing, costing him maybe 1 kilometer an hour or so in straight line speed. Not that much in the grand scheme of things, but when you've got a driver like Chris Coxhead bearing down on you, you need every single advantage that you can get. And as they come around to start lap 18 of 20, Coxhead is just looming in the distance, closing up ever so slightly under brakes. He's overshot. He's overshot. Oh, but can he hold the momentum? Had a red hot go of it. Good save.
Yep, and he's maybe not quite in draft. He's just about on the threshold. It's about 1 second, so he might still have another shot at this, but it might only be with 1 or maybe a lap and a half to go. But I well and truly thought that Brad Ratu was going to get absolutely drilled in the back there from Chris Coxhead, who overshot there. And, you know, Coxhead had so much more draft, and that's not something he would have been used to. He was by himself without draft for so many laps. He knew where his braking point was. All of a sudden, he had draft, and the extra speed just threw him off perhaps a little bit.
Yes, David Kinman continuing his charge. He's just gotten by Kyle Stokes into the second chicane. And the battle with Mitchell Bales and the 2 CMR cars is continuing to go on, with Greg Sharp wanting to get in on this as well for Stealth Sim Force. So everyone's closing up a bit in these dying stages of the race.
Yeah, they are. All the strategies are playing out. Maybe some drivers having a fuel save because they went too risky, or just tire life coming into it as well. So we'll wait and see how this all pans out between this big pack, as Bale's doing a fantastic job just to hold the pressure underneath him at the moment from those 2 CMR cars. And he's got a good shot of holding onto this as out the front of this pack.
Oh, we got a spinner! Spinner! That's Kyle Stokes! Yeah, he spun on the exit of Ascari, just lost it all by himself there. So that's another position for all of those guys. But goodness me, Stokes was running in 5th at the time. How would you be? He had a really good result lined up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking at what he's done there, and it's just the car's bounced a little bit awkwardly on that curb, and he's just gone off. But yeah, he would be absolutely livid with himself. So close to the ends, the finish line in sight with a great result under his belt. And all of a sudden, he is dumped well and truly down the order. So not the ideal way for Kyle Stokes to finish the Super Split 2, because he would not be progressing to the Split 1, as Craig Jones now involved.
Yeah, certainly big lockup for Jones, but looks to me like no big issues there. It looks like he just got on the grass a bit in the braking zone. That could really have ended badly, but fortunately he had the space in front of him. So that's old school circuit design for you. There's no tarmac runoff there on the entry, at least, to the first chicane. There is definitely grass.
Absolutely, and that's how a lot of drivers do like it, and also I think a lot of spectators like it as well. A bit more punishment for when drivers go off, and being an old school circuit, that is a very nice thing to see. Just means drivers are a bit more in line, and you know, there's a bit more risk and reward factor into it as well, as we saw there. But it has not been the ideal way for either of these CMR cars to start this lap, and it has just given Bales a little bit of breathing room as well. So that's ideal for him, not for either of the CMR cars.
No, certainly not. But meanwhile, up the front, our top 2 still close together. But Chris Coxhead, I've been watching him over the last few seconds, and he's just slipping up a little bit, making a few mistakes. And I get the feeling that Ratu, if he can hold himself together, he might have this. They have started lap 20 now, white flag flying in Super Split 2. Coming down into the chicane, you can tell that Chris Coxhead is very hungry for this victory. Remember, he was the pole sitter, so to lose it right off the start and have to follow the guy who started in second all race would really get to you. He would want to be the one in front. So this battle is going to continue, I think, right to the finish line. And I think Coxhead now will be banking on Ratu making an error.
Absolutely, but that's all Chris Coxhead can do at this point. All he can do is just push and hope there's some kind of slip up for Ratu, who goes a little bit deep into the chicane. The gap comes down to 0.6 of a second, so only a little slip up, but it might be enough just to get Coxhead a bit closer out of Lesmo 2, just rake in a few more tenths, and maybe something can happen to Parabolica. Maybe on the exit of Parabolica. We don't know the fuel loads, we don't know how tight they might be. But this is shaping up to potentially be an okay chance for Chris Coxhead if anything happens to Bradley Ratu, which we hope does not happen. But just in case, Chris Coxhead has to position himself to give himself the best opportunity to go into Split 1.
4 corners to go. Now 3. Now 2. This is the end of the lap here at Monza, and this is where it could all go wrong for either of these guys. And you can see Chris Coxhead is in a very good draft at the moment, but Ratu, crucially, still has the gap. If Coxhead goes for a late lunge at Parabolica, oh, he's really closing up, but he's just overshot it. I don't think he'll be able to get it done, but Bradley Ratu is going to round the exit of Parabolica here to take a fantastic victory in Super Split 2 here at Monza. Awesome victory, awesome fight for the lead.
Yep, absolutely. So a great fight between those top two, and they will be joined on the podium by Daryl Carter. He does a very nice job to bring it home for P number 5. Still a few little battles happening though out on circuit. Greg Jones actually found his way past Mitchell Bayless. So a last lap change position there, and almost Steve Jansen getting them at the start-finish line as well. So a bit of a tight finish there, and some last lap change positions. So that's always good to see, and is something we see quite a lot of here at Monza with the high-speed nature, as there's still quite a few cars coming across the line, seeing if anyone is close to make any kind of move to the start-finish line.
Yes, indeed. Kyle Stokes, we're hearing, has run out of fuel. That's a big, big shame for him. He's going to finish in 15th position. Brock Caddy almost making the move on Grant Cairns, but just not close enough. Brock, we got to remember, started from the back. He just scraped into this event. So the All-Star Motorsports driver, car number 124, an excellent result for him, I would imagine. And I believe we've only got a few drivers left to get themselves across the line. Matthew Deere and Joel Kenton. This is for 27th and 26th, and looks to me as though Deere is going to have this. Deere for KRF, Joel Kenton for Progression Racing Australia. They're going to round the final corner and cross the line, and that's going to be all drivers taking the checkered flag in Super Split 2 for now. Let's go to the race results before we get ready for the rest of this event, which is already turning out to be one corker. Bradley Ratu in car number 38, taking victory for Redback Racing Team over Chris Coxhead in car 208. Daryl Carter with a mammoth run from 14th to 3rd. A podium on his debut for Fusion Sim Racing. Can't get much better than that. Ryan Jones finishing in 4th place with David Kinmond in 5th. Craig Jones making his way past Mitchell Bales for 6th place for CMR. Awesome result for him. Steve Jansen coming home in 8th. 9th, Greg Sharp from 16th. Good run from him. Gary Cooper, meanwhile, making it 21st to 10th.
Yep, great result there for Gary Cooper. Tyler Blackburn will finish just behind him in P number 11 with Silvassi, bringing it home in P number 12. Stephen Varga comes home for P number 13 with Simon Pitt, and Carl Stokes, who had a bit of a nightmare in those final few laps, will have to settle for P number 15. Lionel Stapleton in P number 16 with Brenton O'Brien in 17th. Damon Mulqueen, Wayne Taylor, and Grant Cairns, your top 20.
Brock Caddy coming home in 21st, an excellent result for him. Reese Goldfinch from 31st to 22nd for Synergy Sim Racing. Some good runs here throughout the field. Guys just staying out of trouble. Shane Rayner from 30th finishes 23rd. 24th, Stuart Crawford. Chad Hearn coming home in 25th. Matthew Deere losing a position from his start in 26th position. Joel Kenton coming home in 22nd. And now we come to the unfortunate results of the race. Matt Muggleton, he started from 6th. He's going to have to settle for 28th, 4 laps down. Very unfortunate. Joshua Burden suffering some technical issues, putting him out of the race. Stephen Lattimore rounding out the top 30 in the classified results.
Jacob Knight unfortunately ran into trouble with just 7 laps to go, brings it home in 31st. Darrell Lord for 32nd with Oakley Druitt and Warren Pickering, your 34 drivers in Super Split number 2, who weren't all able to make it the 20 laps, but nonetheless, it was a very, very exciting 20 laps race.
It certainly was, and we've got over twice that amount of lappage in the second event of the night. Don't go away. Split 1 coming up very soon. The top drivers in the Australia and New Zealand sim sphere. You're watching the iRacing Esports Network. We are V8s Online, and this is the VRS V8 Supercar Online Premier Series.
3, 2, 1. last year, I was sitting at a desk as a sales manager. And now I'm official McLaren F1 simulator test driver.
So it's 1.4 behind.
This opportunity is huge.
Oh, that's it, 46 watt. That's faster than the factory McLaren driver. And he's done 6 laps.
Let's go race.
So, you want to race in NASCAR. The road starts here. Introducing the eNASCAR Ignite Series powered by iRacing. This is the gateway for all aspiring 13 to 16-year-olds. Starting June 20th, ignite your dreams of one day racing in the top tiers of NASCAR. Go to www.iracing.com/ignite for full details.
So what are you afraid of? Those feelings are made up. For anyone asking who is the best, we putting our hands up.
4 more kilometers.
There we go! This time, like the last time, I'm moving so fast, I'm ready to ride.
Frankie! Down to the inside of Hoosie's off!
Passenger throws the block, and he will keep him behind him.
My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop. Turning the track up. I'll never go back down. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
Welcome back, one and all, to the iRacing Esports Network. If you've just joined us, we are V8s Online, and this is the virtual racing school V8 Supercar Online Premier Series. Super Split 2 just concluded, and we saw some titanic battles all throughout the field. But we have in the interview box right now the winner of Super Split 2, Mr. Bradley Ratu from Redback Racing Team. Brad, welcome to the commentary box. You said to us beforehand that you were still shaking.
Shaking the whole race, and actually I still am now. So that was very, very intense. I was very scared the whole race, actually.
Yeah, you've only been at this sim racing malarkey for about 6 months, and this is your third appearance in V8SCOPS. So to get a victory in one of the races tonight must surely be a fantastic result for you.
I never thought that I'd get a win in for anything really this important so quickly, honestly.
Yes, indeed. Well, looking back at the start, you got a mammoth start compared to Chris Coxhead. Coming into turn one, what was your thoughts? Just try and go for it at turn one and see how things go from there?
Some of the words I can't say over stream, but I knew that on the start, I knew that I could try and get him for the first corner and then have him for the rest of the track. Obviously, I tried to brake later than he did, and I think I succeeded in that. And from the chicane onwards, I just stayed out ahead of him.
Well, thanks to your win in Split 2, you now have automatic entry into Split 1. So what's your game plan from here on out for the rest of the night?
We'll try and work it out when we get there. Obviously, try and use qualifying to try and get used to the track a little bit from the temperature differences. But I'm going to try my best, see if I can work up some places, and hopefully I can get a good result from where I start.
Excellent stuff. Well, before we let you go, Bradley, to get some practice in that new weather for Split 1, who would you like to thank? Who gets it done for you?
I'd like to thank LeBlanc, Inzen Technologies, TTL Driver Academy, GDH iRacing Images, and Bow Repair McKay for all the support they give to Redback Racing Team and all the guys involved in Redback Racing Team. So all the drivers that do all the testing, all the ones that are their support, it's always great.
Congratulations, Brad. Get out there. We'll see you at the end of the race.
Very much.
That was Bradley Ratu from Redback Racing Team. And Bo, we are now in the practice session for Split 1 here, and the conditions are very, very different. We've got a 40-degree track out there.
Yeah, 40 degrees is just absolute night and day. So for poor Brad, who's going to go from those cool conditions to now this, it's going to be quite the climate change for him. But all the drivers are in the same boat. They've got to drive to the conditions. And what this is going to mean is braking distances are going to be a bit harder to judge. Traction's going to be a bit worse as well. and as is tire life. So there's a lot more factors that come into this when the track is just that much hotter. So we could be in for quite an interesting race with these conditions only going to get hotter as the cars do lap after lap.
Yeah, certainly, and there's plenty of high-load sections here at Monza. Of course, we've got the heavy braking zones, and then we've got the fast corners like the Ascari chicane, Curva Grande, and Parabolica, so the drivers are really going to have to watch themselves. Currently, at the top in this practice session is no one, because nobody has set any times yet. But the drivers out there just getting themselves together. The last time they would have driven these cars is in the pre-qualifying session. So these guys have got to get used to the conditions, got to get used to the cars, and then they've got to get into qualifying mode, Bo. Qualifying here is certainly something to behold as teammates draft each other to try and get the best lap time.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Reese, is that there's a bit more strategy that comes into this than some other tracks. So other circuits that we might go to, let's say Snetterton or somewhere of that nature, Slipstream is going to be worth something, but it's not going to be the be-all or end-all. You can still see a general trend in the drivers who are going to be at the top and those who might be mid-pack or somewhere else. But around Monza, there's so much more that comes into it, and we could see some real shocks in this qualifying session just with drivers working together, trying to maximize the straight line speeds around this circuit. So there's every chance this could be one of the more mixed up grids we've had all season, and could provide a lot of interesting surprises.
Yeah, it certainly could. We'll also get a bit of a window into what teams have done with regard to setup. I remember one of the last times we went to Monza in this championship, back when Jared Filsell was driving for ANZ Motorsports. They came to Monza with a car that looked markedly different from the rest of the field. They had found a way to lower the ride height at the rear to such an extent that their straight line speed was absolutely dominant. And I think that's one of the most intriguing things about a championship at such a level as this. You have drivers trying absolutely everything, making use of every tool in their toolbox to try and get some kind of advantage. And now everyone's cottoned on to that. And we see, as we discussed before Super Split 2, these very low rake setups predominantly throughout the field. So it's certainly something to look at from the engineering side of sim racing as well.
Well, it's one of those championships, isn't it? Because we look at the practice times that are slowly filtering in now, and at the top of the timesheet, it's 0.02 of a second that separate two different teams. And it's just what you have to do in that series to get any advantage. And all this time and effort put into the racetrack is one thing, but having that setup knowledge to know just how to get that extra little bit more out of the car can be so crucial when the competition is this high. And it is very tough, and you really do need a team working around the setup to maximize everything so you can go into these races 100% prepared, because there are so many factors that go into setup to make these cars as quick as they are and help the drivers just a little bit more, whether that's with comfort or just outright speed. There's a lot of factors, and every driver out there that is at the top of the timesheets has to be the best one to get those factors all right.
Yes, indeed. And a couple of drivers for whom it will be their first experience trying to get it right at the absolute top level of V8 Supercar racing on the iRacing simulation. We've got our debutants in Split 1. Christopher Kessie, with also Andrew Fraser, Alex Greenwood, and of course our Split 2 winner Brad Ratu. Those four guys making their first appearances in Split 1. So, Bo, you've competed in V8 SCOPS before, am I correct?
Yes, once. Oh, actually twice.
Yeah, so of course, you know firsthand what kind of pressure is on drivers to try and make something of themselves in this series, and especially to get into Split 1 to try and make a statement, see how they go against some of the best in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the most brutal championships in Australasia. Well, I'd say probably the most brutal in Australasia and also the world. And to make it into Split 1 is one of the biggest achievements you could have. And it's such a hard championship to make any kind of progress in. So what we have here in this split here today, the 40 drivers, the boys and girls who have made it, are definitely the best drivers, the quickest drivers that we do have for this combination, the V8 Supercar at Monza. So We only have the best of the best in this one, and it really is going to be who is the cream of the crop to top these timesheets, because this series is just getting more and more competitive each and every week.
Yes, indeed. And one method of determining the closeness, as always, is the championship standings, which we're going to take a look at now. And Interlagos, Bo, was an amazing event, really shook up the championship. We saw some major dramas for the front runners, and that means that the championship standings are now pretty close. Jared Filsell still leading over Ethan Griggolt, but only by 72 points, and Ethan definitely has a chance at really marking his name on this championship.
Oh, absolutely. Of course, we saw earlier in the season at Laguna Seca that Ethan finally got that breakthrough win in the series, so he's got the confidence now in him. He's got lots of pace in the Evolution Racing Team car, and now he was over 100 points behind. The gap's now down to just 72, so the momentum is there, and ERT have been making a lot of progress, and Ethan actually ironically finds himself at the top of the timesheets at the moment as well, so there's all kinds of confidence for him, but the challenge is still there from all the Trans-Tasman racing cars as they find themselves in first, third, and fourth in the championship.
Yes, indeed. Madison Down and Jake Burton in particular, the Trans-Tasman Racing Fuel Autotech, I should probably say, cars. They had a very suboptimal round at Interlagos. Actually, one of the most dramatic moments I or anyone involved in this series has probably seen in this series history. Those drivers actually making contact with each other. Or actually, sorry, I'm getting my details a little bit wrong here. Jake Burton making contact with another car, which then made contact with Madison Down. Now, those guys, there would have been a little bit of intra-team drama after that, so they are going to have to sort that out and get themselves back onto the front foot to try and keep their championship alive. Remember, they got to drive with each other in the Enduros.
Yeah, absolutely. So that little bit of tension is not ideal when we do consider this is the last round before the Enduro, so they've not got much time to sort that out in the team. We have seen a bit more tension as well in TTR this season, so they're perhaps not as comfortable as they have been in previous seasons, with Filsell and Burton, I believe, also having a little bit of issues off the circuit in previous rounds as well. So TTR just have to make sure they calm things down perhaps in the team, and just make sure they work things out behind the scenes to really ensure that when they do go into these Enduro seasons, which is just coming up, that they really are on the right foot, because right now things could get a little bit dicey.
Certainly, and looking at the driver in fifth, Ross Rizzo. I tell you what, Trick Sim Sports have been one of the breakout teams in the AusNZ sim racing community in the last year, and Forzan El Nabi is one of the top guys to watch out for, formerly of Performance Sim Sports, but unfortunately that team is no more, and so El Nabi has made the jump to Trick Sim Sports. Rizzo down the timesheets a bit on a 51.3, but Forzan El Nabi just a couple of thousandths behind Ethan Griggolt. You've got to think this team is definitely on the up and up.
Absolutely. I don't want to use the word again, but they do have a lot of momentum at the moment, do Trick Sim Sports, because they're off the back of some great results in the Monday Night Official Series. They've had some even better results in the Australian Online Supercars Championship, and that's not even including what they do in the Porsche Super Cup, what they do in the GT3 Series as well. They have so much going for them at the moment, and we see Forzan, who, let's not forget, is off the back of a win at Interlagos, another great result for the team. Momentum is just building and building for those guys. So for Forzan to be 2 thousandths of a second behind Ethan Griggolt, who we know as one of the leading drivers in this series, that just shows how quick this team can be, how successful they can be, and how consistent they can be as well, with Rizzo being 5th in the championship and El Nabi constantly performing above his weight.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of consistency, how about Kurt Stenberg and Emily Jones? Their races have not always gone their way, particularly at Interlagos, but they're definitely in the top 10 in the championship for a reason. Those Apex Replicas Trans-Tasman drivers there.
Yeah, they've been doing a fantastic job, and I believe that team was originally called a development team of sorts for TTR, but they've definitely proved that they don't need much development. They've been extremely quick, had some fantastic results, and as we were saying before, heading into the Enduro seasons, they could be well and truly a dark horse to spring a result, because let's not forget, we do have a teams championship as well. And those guys, the so-called development team of TTR, currently third outright, which is fantastic.
Yeah, certainly. As we flick over to the team standings, of course, you've got Momo Australia TTR1, which is down in Burton. Philsell and Josh Muggleton in second in the team standings, and of course Stenberg and Jones in third. So in the team standings, Trans-Tasman Racing, clean sweep of the podium, which you've got to say, like, Trans-Tasman is one of the old guard teams in the community, and they've always been at the top there or thereabouts since around 2009, 2010. So they've been at this for a very long time, and they've certainly still got it.
Absolutely, and every series has a team that is sort of considered the benchmark. If you look at the Grand Prix series, you've got Coanda. If you look at the GT World Championship on the iRacing Esports Network, you perhaps look at a Pure Racing team or FAG2 Racing. When you look at V8SCOPS, the first team everyone thinks of when they think of dominance in a series is Trans-Tasman Racing, and what they're doing in that team's championship is just proof of that. First, second, third, and let's not forget that Luke Harvey and Sam Blacklock are fifth as well. So much momentum in that team, so much consistency, and they have definitely lost none of their talent over the years, and many championships they've won.
Yeah, for sure. And another team that we should probably look at, of course, you've got Evolution Racing Team with two teams, in the top 10 in the standings. All Star Motorsports as well. Dane Warren, one of the best drivers, best up and comers, I think, in this series. We should definitely keep a lookout for him in future rounds. But how about Synergy Sim Racing in 6th and 7th? They got a win at Interlagos with Wayne Burke as part of that reverse grid sprint round, but they've just been there or thereabouts in the championship for so many years, and it's all about consistency with those guys. They managed to make it into the top 10 all the time, and round about top 5 or so for the likes of Brenton Hobson and Glenn Postlethwaite, round to 10th back to about 15th for the likes of other guys in the team. They're definitely one of those teams that's solid, if you can say anything about them.
Absolutely, solid is definitely a word I would use for them, and they're not a team that's dipping in form at all either. Of course, we saw earlier this season at Phillip Island, they easily had one of the quickest cars there, and I believe also Wayne Burke took that car to pole position. So the pace in the cars is there. The drivers are very quick and developing confidence in themselves as well, like Wayne Burke off the back of Interlagos. So those drivers are always punching above their weight, always doing a fantastic job. And Synergy Sim Racing are having a bit of a breakout year. They've got their first pole, they've got their first win, they've topped quite a few pre-qualifying sessions now, I think, as well. So they've had some fantastic form, and talking about the Endurance Series and coming up once again, that's another team you really do have to look at.
Yeah, certainly. And, it's the Enduro season. Of course, the 3 big long races of the season with driver swaps, drivers piling into one car for their respective teams to try and get the best result they possibly can. It's where these driver pairings that were worked out at the start of the season, that is where they're going to come into account. That's where you're really going to see which is the best 2-car team in the field. And I tell you what, all of those teams currently in the top 10 have something to back themselves up with regards to enduro campaigns. So I'm certainly looking forward to that.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at the top 10, even go further down to the top 20, I'm not sure you can find a single driver pairing that you could potentially call weak or potentially could be improved. There's so many strong pairings, and it's going to be interesting to see how those relationships between the two drivers go. We've seen them obviously working in the background for practices before pre-qualifying, but when it comes to race time, it's always been flip the visor down and get straight gung-ho into the race, and if the driver's in front of you, you might go for a move or attack one another. It's racing, but now it's a switch of focus. They've got to be teammates to one another, they've got to help each other much more, and really work with one another, as that's going to be a very interesting thing as we are just a couple of seconds away from kicking qualifying off, Reese.
Yes, indeed. This is where the money will be made. Metaphorical money in many cases, I suppose. But 20 minutes session around the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. And this is where the draft is going to come into play that we were talking about before. Coming out of the pits, look for drivers sorting out a position on track with their teammates so that they can all have a go at getting the fastest times down. Currently in the qualifying session, and an ocean of cars, a tidal wave making their way out of the pits. Madison Down, the first driver out, and Trans-Tasman leading the way. Chris Robinson repping for Redback.
Yep, and he's a bit out of sequence because he's in the middle of a lot of Trans-Tasman racing cars, but ideally that is not the worst place in the world to be. So a lot of drivers on this first run probably won't be trying to be too focused on hooking up with the teammate. That's something we might see a bit more further on into the session. This first run is all about going to be getting the best lap you can in whatever bit of track position you have, wherever that might be. So we'll wait and see, but there are a few drivers just trying to find each other on track. So strategy for some definitely being played out by now. Being played out already, but a few others just waiting and seeing whoever they might end up with. But it's Madison Down who will be leading this train around. Often we see Emily Jones leading the train in SCOPS, but of course she's over in Japan at the moment away, so she will definitely be not leading this train at the moment. But Madison Down will take up that role, and we'll see what kind of hole he can punch in the air for the driver of Josh Muggleton just behind, and see just what kind of time difference a draft versus no draft can really make.
Yes, indeed. So coming through Ascari, we've got to really watch out through this section of the circuit. It's easy to get an off track over these curbs if you mess up slightly, and in previous years, that curb, the left-hander at the exit, it was all about just straddling the speed bump over the middle of the curb. But now you see drivers mostly avoiding it as styles evolve, and iRacing, of course, updating the car over the years. Really shows how adaptable a lot of these drivers are, that they are able to stay consistently at the top throughout all of the times that cars and tracks and weather systems have changed as well on this sim over the years. But the first lap of the session has begun, and Madison Down giving a draft to Josh Muggleton. It'll be interesting to see how this turns out. They're nailing that first chicane very nicely, and you can see just behind them Jake Burton and Lee Ellis drafting each other as well. So from the non-Trans-Tasman point of view, Chris Robinson is in a good position. Ethan Grigg-Gault a little far behind on Sam Blacklock, so not sure how he's going to go.
No, not at all. So Ethan, he definitely would have wanted to have been a lot closer to Blacklock, but he's not going to get any draft. And interestingly, he's also not played it too slow on the outlap in regards to Riley Blythe, his teammate, just behind as well. So Ethan got all the clear track in the world he wants, but whilst that would normally be nice, no draft around here could potentially hurt him quite a lot. As Jared Filsell, another driver we have to talk about, not quite close enough to the draft to Riley Blythe, just on the outskirts of it. And that's not ideal for him either, especially when a lot of his championship rivals at the front of the field do have a slipstream.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to be crucial for Filsell to get this 100% right, because we haven't been able to say this for the longest time due to his dominance, but his championship is definitely in danger at this point. He's got a real threat from behind this time, with some mistakes and some decisions, some incidents not going his way. So Filsell needs to really step up and show why he is the reigning champion of this series. The first laps coming across the line now, and Madison Down and Josh Muggleton both setting 49.4s. Jake Burton popping into third with a 49.5 as times continue to file in. So Trans-Tasman Racing with the dominant so far is looking at Jared Filsell
to the top.
He goes to pole by 2/10. That's a really good time.
Yeah, and another good time by Ian Ford as well. He wasn't a driver I expected to see so high up. He was a bit midfield in the pre-qualifying standings, but an absolutely fantastic first lap behind Forza El Nabi's slipstream. Goes right up to P2, and that's what I said. You can get a few different surprises around this circuit, a little bit of a mix. And that's exactly what Ian Ford has done. We've seen him be very quick in the last few races, and he's continuing that form once again here at Monza.
Yes, indeed. Very good time from Ian Ford. Just a thousandth quicker than Madison Down, but provisional front row at the start of the session. Very good to see that. Forzan El Nabi in 6th at the moment, and wow, making it into the top 5. Jake Maloney in car number 29. So TTL Esports, you know, we've been saying throughout the season that they've kind of fallen off the radar since Josh Rogers abandoned the iRacing V8 to pursue a career in the Grand Prix series, driving the Formula One car. Bit of a transition for him, but the V8 division of the team has certainly seen better days. But with drivers like Brady Myers and Jake Maloney, who are making their way through Ascari, you got to think TTL definitely has a bright future with these guys.
Oh, absolutely. And they have tried to get a few more drivers into their division of V8 Supercars as well. We look at Stuart Vaughan recently jumped over to them as well for the SCOPS program. We saw Scott Larnack and, of course, as you mentioned, Brady Myers as well. So they have been trying to get back into the SCOPS scene. And with Jacob Maloney in P number 5 at that moment, in the moment, with Brady Myers also in the top 10, I think they're well and truly back into the SCOPS program and coming into the Endurance Series, which I think that Josh Rogers might be competing in to help those guys out. You know, it's a really good turn of form for them to be right back where they rightfully deserve to be, in my opinion.
Yeah, certainly. TTL Esports, another one of those old guard teams that I was talking about earlier. They've been on the scene since before the turn of the millennium, actually. They started on Grand Prix Legends, so a few of those guys are definitely elder statesmen of sim racing, and they've always been competitive there or thereabouts in the field. So good opening campaign and qualifying for Maloney and Myers, but for the most part, it seems the first run of qualifying is now over, and we're not seeing much of a change for the standings. Daniel Williams, though, out there trying to set a couple of laps on his own.
Yeah, well, that is something you can do, and you know, if you do hit all the apexes and absolutely maximize the lap in clean air, you will still be able to get a very quick lap time. And that's what he needs to do. So a bit of pressure on his shoulders at the moment, actually, as he did not get a good first lap. Must have ran into an issue at some point. So for Williams, this is quite a critical lap. And with everyone else coming on their out laps, it's a bit of an unwanted distraction, because even though they will do their best to get out of the way and not impede you in any way, you know, there could be a car just a little bit in the way of your brake marker, or just it's in your train of, in your bit of thought before you enter a corner. It's just off-putting in the smallest bit. So that's probably the worst factor for Williams on this lap at the moment. But nonetheless, looks like he's doing a great job at the moment.
Yeah, very clean lap so far from Williams as he exits the Lesmo turns. Doesn't look like he's put a single foot wrong all throughout this lap. Very, very impressive. But behind him, he's got a hot in pursuit Michael Taliancic. And Michael currently sitting in 26th in the qualifying standings. Of course, part of a new team that has been formed from the ashes of Performance Sim Sports, Pursuit Sim Racing. So Taliancic still running his characteristic green on his livery, but with a few different signage options on it. And just in front of him, Williams actually going pretty wide in Parabolica, so I don't know if this lap is going to be completed. It seems to me like he's committing. We'll see what kind of time Williams can do here. Currently sitting in 33rd. He will go up into 32nd, so just ahead of Alex Greenwood.
Yep, so any improvement at the moment is an improvement, but we will turn our attention to the fan favorite of all drivers. It's Lee Ellis with the eyes wide open on the crash helmet visor, and they have to be wide open because that was not the nicest run through the second chicane. And he's under a bit of pressure here at the moment, Reese, because we are getting into this session now where the track does begin to deteriorate. The track temp really rises, so it's so much harder to get the lap time hooked up. And he currently does not have a time on the board, as do a few other drivers, including Ben Smith and Scott Soslowski.
Yeah, certainly. If you don't have a lap in by now, at this point in the session, we're actually almost at the halfway point. You really need to light a fire under yourself and get out there and set a time, because we've seen it happen all throughout the season, especially when the track is warm like it is now. When the track heats up, the rubber currently on the racing line becomes a bit more molten, a bit more slippery, so there's not as much grip available to you as there would be on a track that's maybe a little bit cooler or getting less sun. So times later in the session are often not as quick, and drivers aren't able to improve on times that they've already set. So a driver like Lee Ellis, who doesn't have a time on the sheets at all, is certainly not in an optimal position. He's crossed the line to set a 1 minute 50.8 though, which still is a reasonable lap time. Puts him just outside the top 30 though.
Yeah, so probably not what Lee Ellis would have wanted, especially with all his teammates at the top of the timesheets. So a bit of a shame there, but Ethan Grigol does improve on his second lap in the draft of Ian Ford. So that's what we're talking about earlier, Reese, with Evolution Racing Team sending their two cars out together to draft one another, and Ethan Grigol immediately with an improvement.
Yeah, certainly. Ethan, 1 minute 49.635 on that lap just then. So that means that ERT is another team with two cars in the top 10. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do from here. Ian Ford still holding that position too. I'm actually surprised that no one has gone out there and beaten that time yet, because you know, Ian Ford, he's an incredibly quick driver on his day, but we've seen him sort of fall back a little bit to the lower reaches of the top 10 and lower in recent times, and Ethan Grigol has been the one grabbing most of the headlines for ERT, but Ian Ford, I'll tell you what, at a track like this, he's certainly doing everything he needs to try and get himself up in the championship standings.
Yeah, absolutely. And for being a next teammate for Ian at ERT, I can say that over the last few months, he has been extremely busy, had a lot on his plate, so the practice and effort hasn't quite been into Scops. Also got recently married as well, so congratulations to 40 from all of us at V8 Online for that. But he hasn't had quite the same amount of practice as he perhaps would have had last season. So 40 is on a bit of a comeback for this race as well, in P number 2 at the moment, which is fantastic to see. And hopefully, as we head to the Endurance Series, which I can say he absolutely loves and is going to be putting a lot of effort into, this is a very nice confidence booster just before we get into it.
Yeah, certainly. Those guys going into the pits possibly to bring one final run out to try and get Ethan Grigol further up to the front of the field. So that's the second phase of qualifying down. Not really an official phase, but you do see drivers going out in very large groups. I'm just looking at Kurt Stenberg and Sam Blacklock going very slow at pit exit. I believe they are waiting for Lee Ellis, so all of these guys can draft each other, try and get themselves up the standings a bit. Sam Blacklock currently in 8th, Kurt Stenberg in 12th, so Lee Ellis is the one who really needs help out of these guys.
Yeah, and with not just one TTR car to draft, but two, that is a fantastic advantage for Lee Ellis to have. This is a tactic TTR are using quite a lot, because we also have another trio of TTR cars, which is Josh Muggleton, Jake Bird, and Madison Down, just starting a lap at the moment, and they've just begun it, and are all in a line as well, but they will have Gene Fiddies in front as well. So all the TTR cars in a trio at the moment, which is awesome to see in regards to teamwork, but can they hook the lap up and get the result that they need?
Yes, indeed. Oh, Josh Muggleton was just briefly off the track and getting very up close and personal with those curves, and I'm noticing Ross Rizzo actually coming back onto the circuit. I believe he had a little bit of trouble coming into the second chicane, just overshooting it a little bit. Perfectly fine to do that in qualifying, but that kind of behavior in the race would certainly have to be minimized. I'm looking at it. Whoa, hang on a minute. Coming down the back straight towards Ascari, we've got two Trans-Tasman cars off on either side. That's Ellis and Stenberg. I'm not too sure what's going on there.
No, not at all. So a little bit of a checkup for a lot of drivers at the moment. And they've all had to bail out of that, and that is not going to be helping Lee Ellis's cause at all, because we're down to just 5.5 minutes in qualifying, and they're going to go and have another crack at this, I think, but they've already used a lot of life out of their tires, and they've got to make sure they're fueled up for one more lap as well. So for Lee Ellis, currently down in 31st, that is not the best scenario at all.
No, certainly not. I think there might have been a little bit of confusion over who was going to be leading, because I saw Ellis actually slow down by a fair margin. Maybe they were just letting some lapping at cars by, because Kurt Stenberg went for a proper play in the sandpit through the Lesmo turns. He went all the way out into the gravel trap. So no matter, we'll see what they can do from here as their compatriots tour through the pits. See what these guys can do, as Ian Ford is just now starting a lap. So we're going to follow along with Ethan Grigault, who is in Ian Ford's draft as they come down to the first chicane here at Monza. What's the matter, Bo?
I've just noticed as well that Madison Down has gone to P number 2, and he was a 1,000th behind 40. He's gone a 1,000th in front.
Oh, 2,000s. Hey, it's enough, isn't it?
It's absolutely enough. It's all you need, and that is a fantastic exchange for those two drivers. But 40's on a lap at the moment. He's leading Ethan Grigault, but he has every chance to get that front row of the grid position back. So we'll see what 40 has, if he has anything left in the tank to make this happen. But at the moment, I think Ethan Grigault, out of this pairing, is probably the one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, certainly. He's definitely got the pace. The potential for pace as well to try and get up there, and Ian Ford obviously with no draft. So Ethan has gotten a very good exit out of the Lesmos, just a little messy on the exit getting into the gravel, but that doesn't matter much in the grand scheme of things. It'll be through Ascari and on the run up to Parabolica that the draft really comes into play. You can see Ethan, oh no, would that have been a slowdown for Ian Ford? I get the feeling it might have been, and this is certainly not an optimal situation for the ERT boys, but Ethan, I think, is going to try and continue this, stay in the draft of Mr. Ford. So Ian down to third.
Oh, that did not look comfortable under braking into Parabolica at all for Ethan Grigault, and not comfortable on exit either, as they're just doing a bit of a drift show on the exit now. So it was looking very nice, but that error for Ian Ford through Ascari might have just put Ethan off as well.
Yeah, certainly. So they're only going to have one final chance to set a lap here, as we've got Brady Myers on screen at the moment, formerly of Progression Racing Australia, but recently joining TTL Esports, and really showing his worth as a driver in V8SCOPS in both teams. He's currently lapping with not much of a draft to speak of. He has got Chris Robinson in front of him, though.
Yep, and I think he's probably just close enough to get a bit of an advantage off of that. So that's every little bit gained for Brady Myers as he comes across the start-finish line to do a 49.8. So not quite an improvement, but nonetheless very consistent time for him.
Yeah, certainly. So we'll be looking to see what he can do from here as we look at Brenton Hobson. Crosses the line to set a 1 minute 50.091. Again, not quite getting to where he needs to improve. Brenton Hobson, he used to be Mr. 6th place, but he's seen his positions sort of fall a bit in recent rounds, and you know, I don't think that really gives him enough credit for the driver that he is. You know, Brenton Hobson, one of the very quick guys at Synergy Sim Racing, and he always puts his heart and soul into everything he does. So we'll see what he can do from position 13 as the Trick Sim Sports guys are desperately trying to improve their position. Forzan El Nabi giving a draft to Ross Rizzo. Remember, Forzan is in 6th at the moment, Rizzo down in 20th position. So this is an ERT-style ploy to get the fellow team car further up the grid. We'll see what they can do. Forzan El Nabi nice and clean through Ascari, so this could be an improvement for Rizzo.
Yeah, absolutely, and it also could be an improvement for El Nabi because he's in the draft of Daniel Williams as well, so it's not just Rizzo that has a lot to gain in this little draft pack at the moment, as Rizzo actually a little bit fallen behind the draft of El Nabi, but it's still going to be a slight advantage, just not as much as he would have wanted as they round their way through Parabolica, and we'll see what kind of times they can set down as they both commit to the start-finish line, and we'll see if any of these three drivers can improve their time. No improvement for the first two, and we see the driver of Rizzo go through and no improvement either.
Oh, that must be so frustrating for them. I think the track has well and truly got no pace left in it at all. So I guess for these guys, it's going to be the best they can hope for. They won't be able to set another lap as Lee Ellis goes to 15th. That is an improvement. So from outside the top 30 up into a solid midfield position, Lee Ellis setting himself up for a good round.
Yeah, so that is a very nice improvement for Lee Ellis. But the Trans-Tasman Racing car is getting involved in a few little slipstream packs as Madison Down currently giving a little bit of a draft to Ian Ford, just a few car lengths behind. And he has Ethan Grigault, and then it's another few Trans-Tasman Racing cars as well. So TCR and ERT, former well and truly rivals in this series, fighting it out for wins, are now almost helping each other here at Monza as Kurt Stenberg does a bit of lawn mowing as the session actually now comes to an end.
Yes, indeed. Christopher Kessie is going to be the first driver to cross the line when the checkered flies or not. He's going to go straight for the pits there. But these guys up the front, it's going to be intriguing to see what happens because all of these guys currently... Oh, actually, hang on a minute. Madison Down's fallen back behind those guys.
Ah, okay, so maybe a little bit of an error on his lap. I'll just rewind and have a look if there were any issues, and there was indeed at the second chicane, and I think he just might have got a little bit of wheel spin and he saw the delta was down, so just decided to bail out of it. So no improvement or slipstream advantage for Ian Ford on this time around, but we'll see what lap time he can do. Sam Blacklock in the background. Hello, Armco. And there's any chance of an improvement for him. All shades of gone as Ian Ford makes his way now into the heavy braking zone of Parabolica. Tries to carry the speed all the way through. Currently lies in P number 3. Needs just 1,000th of a second to get past onto the front row of the grid.
Yes, indeed. And Ethan Grigault, it'll be on for him as well to see what these guys can do. For Ian Ford, no lap time set. Ethan Grigault... again, not an improvement, only 200ths of a second behind his current best time, so no improvement for those guys. One person that has improved, though, is Michael Taliancic. He makes his way up into 25th with a 1 minute 50.346.
Yeah, so a nice improvement there at the dying seconds there as Henry King comes across the line. No improvement for him, so most drivers finding that there's not enough grip on this circuit at the moment just to get any kind of improvement, so that might just be about it for our laps. Jake Maloney doesn't look like he's on a lap at the moment, but a great result for him in P number 5. And that might just be about it here, Reese.
Yeah, certainly. You know, this is a very long circuit, 5.7 kilometers. So once you make that tour back to the pits, that's an awful lot of time taken to try and get back to the pits. As we have the grid up on screen for you now. Jared Filsell, once again, pole position for Trans-Tasman Racing by 0.2 from Madison Down, a further 1,000th ahead of ERT's Ian Ford in 3rd place. Josh Muggleton making it 4th, a very good job from him as we see Muggo has lost none of his pace. Jake Maloney in 5th place, good job there. Forzan El Nabi up in 6th for Trick Sim Sports. Jake Burton in 7th, Sam Blacklock 8th, Ethan Grigault 9th, and Brady Myers making it 2 TTL cars in the top 10.
Jordan Ross will kick things off from the 6th row of the grid alongside Kurt Stenberg. Brenton Hobson from P number 13 with his teammate Wayne Burke, and TTR's Lee Ellis in the top 15. Brett Loxton from 16th with Riley Blythe with black rims on his car this time, good boy, in P number 17. Chris Robinson from P number 18 with ASM's Marie Frushka, and Trick Sim Sports Ross Rizzo the top 20.
Now, there's a name I haven't seen before in 21st. Sean Kelly. I haven't seen him in a long, long time out on track. So good to see you back, Sean. Glenn Postlethwaite in 22nd. Mitch McLeod, 23rd. 24th, Gene Fiddies. Michael Taliancic rounding out the top 25. We'll cycle through the rest of the grid for you now. But now it is time to get things sorted for the start of this race as the drivers continue to load onto the grid. It's a bit of a longer grid up time for this particular session, but tell you what, we saw Chris Coxhead definitely showed us in Super Split 2 how much difference the launch off the line, can mean.
Absolutely. It could be make or break for who leads into turn number 1, and especially when you consider the track temp here, it is not going to be easy putting 650 plus horsepower down through the Dunlops from the rear tires only. So the start is going to be so crucial here, and we have seen a few little incidents at turn number 1 over the years in this Split 1 series. at this circuit. So we'll see just how calm and how feisty these drivers are willing to play as we head to 15 seconds.
Yes, indeed. We're almost there, ready to get things going here for the Italian 250 at the Autodromo Nazionale in Monza. And I tell you what, in a field like this, lap 1, turn 1 is always a treat. So the 10-second period has begun. The lights are up. The revs are rising. Who is going to get the best launch? It's going to be Jared Filsell, who gets a really good start. And have a look at the start from Jake Burton in the background. He's actually going very well there versus Jake Maloney. But now it's crunch time. Coming into turn 1. See how many people survive this one. Filsell gets through cleanly. They get starting to go side by side. El Nabi and Maloney. Looks like the majority of drivers almost got through cleanly. Yeah, that's Marie Hrushka. Oh, she managed to get away from it though. Still, a few drivers off into the gravel trap and certainly in the sticks. That was Wayne Burke, one of the cars involved in that. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely unfortunate, but we head to the second chicane now where things can get just as dicey as the first chicane, all trying to sort their way out as Luke Harvey having a few little issues of his own of the technical nature as they all so far look okay from the second chicane. So just trying to sort out where they are on circuit, but at the moment is by all means Jared Filsell leading this race with Madison Down trying to hang on and Ian Ford trying to make it one ERT car on the pole.
Sean Kelly, getting together with Chris Robinson, and that has made an accordion effect ensue through that section of the field. My apologies for that, but this is looking very frenetic. Mitch McLeod right in the middle of all of this with Glenn Postlethwaite and Ross Rizzo and Sean Kelly going side by side. Sean Kelly, of course, a bit out of practice. It's been a while since he's jumped into the V8. He's had other commitments. Chris Robinson is off. So this is going to be pretty awkward getting back onto the circuit. The drivers are going to have to avoid him there. Chris Robinson, not a very good lap 1 at all.
No, not at all, but we'll see how things pan out into the Parabolica as they all try and sort themselves out. Still a side-by-side one of the Synergy Sim Racing cars of Glenn Postlethwaite getting a bit squirrely under brakes, and that just, Michael Taliashi just moves aside to give him a bit of room, and that opens the door for Mitch McLeod as these guys are still not calming down from the first lap. Side-by-side, still on this first lap. And we have to remember it's 44 laps, so there's a long way. You don't want to play it too risky immediately, but they're going to as they go side by side into turn number 1. Who is going to be the last of the late breakers as they dive their way down? Gene Fitty's almost into the back of Cracknell, who gets turned, and he will just about hold on to it in front of his teammate Jamie McKnight as they try and sort their way through the first chicane.
Yes, indeed. Meanwhile, up the front, Jake Maloney has gotten past Josh Muggleton. He did that at the first chicane. He's now up into 4th, and oh no, he's almost overcooked it into the first chicane. That's going to leave him open to Muggleton again. So Maloney, we know he's got good pace at Monza. In the Australian Online Supercar Championship on Friday, he was absolutely incredible there. So he's got pace, but just making those tiny little mistakes, he is under a lot of pressure in this top 5.
Yeah, well, I think he knows that the pace is very strong underneath him at the moment, but Josh Muggleton, a bit of a cork in the bottle, as the top 3 have skipped away to the rate of almost 2.5 seconds. So they've had a fantastic first few laps, and Muggleton has by no means had that great start. He does go a bit deep into Ascari, so he's scrubbing a lot more speed through the right-hander, through the left-hander, and Maloney will just be able to carry a bit more exit speed, but it looks like Muggo just about has the legs on him at the moment, and El Nabi might actually be the threat here.
Yeah, well, you can see Jake Maloney going major defensive there. El Nabi having to back out. Maloney, big move there at Parabolica, and I think Josh Muggleton actually overcooked it a little bit. Yes, and goodness me, El Nabi right up the inside, surging along the inside of the circuit. And I tell you what, El Nabi, he's a careful guy, but I know how many drivers in this field would snap at the chance for turn 1. Look at Jake Burton, though. He wants a piece of this as well. El Nabi is going to go for the move almost. Have a look at that. That's Brady Myers coming up the inside, just managing to pull it up, almost making contact, but fortunately getting through cleanly. My voice box is starting to hurt, Bo.
And now Ethan Grigot buys into this battle as well. He now splits the two TTL cars. This battle pack has absolutely gone off on lap number 3. And that opening few corners of this lap have well and truly split it up. Muggleton and Elnabi break away, Burden in his own. But behind, Brady Myers has all kinds of pressure behind him from Ethan Grigot, who's trying to make good on his start. Lost the spot to Brady Myers, might think about getting it back into the first Lesmo. He's still got the overlap, and now he's just about got the position. He dives to the inside. Job done. Myers loses one spot and now has Jacob Maloney, who is arguably the quicker of the two TL cars at the moment, right behind.
Yeah, good move there from Ethan Grigot to surge up the inside at the first Lesmo. Good overtaking opportunity there if the driver gets a bad run out of the second chicane. So really frenetic racing here at Monza at the moment, but that top 3, just checking back in with them. Ian Ford is hanging on very well to those two TTR cars, but Jared Filsell starting to gap Madison down.
Yeah, which is a little bit surprising considering that he has no draft, and Madison, of course, will. As I see in the background, Elnabi thinks about getting past Josh Muggleton and might just do it. He's got the preferred line into the Parabolica, and now he has the position just about as Muggleton falls back in line. And Elnabi finally gets the job done on Muggleton, which he almost had on the last lap, but finally gets it done. But it's all about carrying the speed down this long straight now as Muggleton gets the slipstream. And Elnabi just going in and out a little bit, and Muggleton actually going beyond the white line, which is something that might be looked at a little bit, but Elnabi was blinking. But Muggleton now does have the inside, and he's now got the position as he dives the inside nice and late on the brakes, just about pulls it up. Elnabi's going to have a good exit though, but Jake Burden has now brought his way into this battle as well.
He certainly has, and this battle between Forzan Elnabi and Josh Muggleton is by no means over. They're definitely trading out braking maneuvers. You can see Elnabi almost taking to the grass there to try and find his way past Muggo, and they're going to go side by side to the second chicane. This doesn't always work. I'll tell you what, it's definitely not worked for either of them. The accordion effect has ensued, and that's really slowed up Jake Burton and Ethan Grigot, almost opening them up to an attack by those two TTL cars. So it's curious to see how all of these drivers try and find their position in this battle pack. This is a chain of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars, and I've got a car off in the background. That's Kurt Stenberg on the exit of the second Lesmo, and he's going to get past Julie by Murray Krushka and Sean Kelly. So Stenny, not a good run there.
No, that's a disaster for Stenny, who's doing so well in this championship, but it won't be any good for him as he falls behind those two and are all the way down to 17th now from 12th on the grid. But in this little battle pack for P number 4, Elnabi already doing a little bit of duck and weaving, trying to get rid of the slipstream of Josh Muggleton as they fire their way into Parabolica, and Elnabi just a little bit wider than he would have liked, but will be able to carry the speed down this long straight. But I'm very surprised by how hard they are fighting at the moment, Reese, considering that this is a longer race for this championship and that we are still so early and there is still tyres to look at and fuel to look after.
Yeah, certainly. 2 mandatory pit stops in this race for the drivers over this 44-lap length. 250 kilometers, so racing like Elnabi and Muggo are now with Ethan Grigot. There was a little bit of contact between Jake Burton and Ethan Grigot there, and actually I'm seeing a couple of cars going side by side, Kelly and Hrushka. Kelly getting the move done on Hrushka there with Kurt Stenberg having to yield to Ross Rizzo. So that's crucial as well. Jordan Ross, meanwhile, in car 143, he's looking to try and mix it with the TTL drivers. So I tell you what, you are right, though. I really wasn't expecting them to be racing this hard this early in the race.
Yeah, they're all really trying to get any positions they can get very early on, whether that's a part of their strategy to make positions early and maybe save later or something. That's what we don't know, and we'll have to find out. But at the moment, it seems like those that are trying to play this smart, save fuel, save tires, they'll just be buying themselves into such a great position later on in this race as the drivers try and sort themselves out. You can see there that Jacob Maloney having a big look there at his teammate Brady Myers into Ascari. So those guys, no team orders there at the moment, trying to work each other. Who is the quicker of the pairing to lead this battle pack? So they do have to be a little bit careful because they will start to lose Ethan Grigot, who has broken away and slowly begun to join this little trio up front of Burton, Muggleton and Elnabi.
Yes, indeed. It's almost NASCAR-like, the racing that you see here. You've got to be really careful of who you battle with, and you've almost got to work together with the drivers around you to stay in touch with the drivers at the front of the battle pack you're in. Otherwise, you just completely lose out, and it really hurts your chances going into the second half of the race. They seem to have semi-sorted themselves out, though, aside from Jake Burton, who is going to go for the move, coming into turn one on Josh Muggleton. Have a look at how deep Ethan Griggold has gone on the brakes
teammates
as well. Oh, yeah, have a look at that. That's really interesting. Myers versus Maloney.
Yeah, exactly. They were fighting just a little bit, but also Muggleton and Jake Burton actually made a bumper-to-bumper contact as well, and I thought for a minute Muggleton might have almost rotated Jake Burton. Fortunate not to, but it did bring Ethan Griggold just a little bit closer, which is not what the teammates want to be doing. So, yeah, once again, Jake Burton not being scared or upset to fight his teammates. He's willing to get the elbows out on whoever he needs to race. And he's got a bit of a statement now to make with Forza and Elnabi just in front. And we know those two have a little bit of history after Oran Park.
Yeah, certainly. So, still, I suppose, some unfinished business to work out between those two. But Elnabi, I think, would be absolutely loving the fighting that's been going on behind him, because he's got a pretty sizable gap. Of course, in the great context of things, I suppose it doesn't mean all that much, as Ethan Griggold having a look at Ascari at Josh Muggleton. It's actually 4 Smuggo wide, so Ethan's going to have a very good run coming out of this corner, possibly another chance at getting by him, and you know that there's unfinished business after the last few laps between Muggleton and Griggold.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see if he commits, but he looks more content just to sit behind and wait for this main straight, which is definitely the better of the two overtake opportunities, as Muggleton does not meet the apex at all, and Ethan Griggold just slides up the inside, but by doing that, he's actually not going to get the same amount of run. He's not going to have as much of a slipstream. He's able to get that slipstream now, though, as he falls back in line, tries to get a bit more speed, but his run is not going to be the same as if he was behind the entire way through the corner. But he is not going to mind at all, because he looks in the preferred spot to get this move done, but Screwly under brakes. Car not as settled as Trans-Tasman Racing Car. A bit of a squeeze as well on Josh Muggleton. So they're going to continue side by side once again. The Curva Grande, and Ethan should be able to get up the inside, and does indeed get that position, but they did lose quite a bit of time in the process to Jake Burton just in front, and Muggleton not content to sit behind as he immediately tries to get this position back, and not making life easy, but decides in the end to throw the white flag and just follow the Evolution Racing Team car.
Yeah, that's it. What they need to do is try and gap those TTL Esports guys behind them, because you can tell Brady Myers knows what's happening here. He knows that there's a chance for himself and Maloney to nab an extra 2 positions. So it's really not in the driver's best interests to be fighting it out, passing each other corner after corner after corner. I do think, though, that Jake Burton and Forza Elnabi, that's definitely going to be a battle to watch, because Jake is not as close to Elnabi as a lot of the other drivers are, to the drivers around them, but it's that gradual catch-up that we're looking for, and I think Burton realizes that he can't go making rash moves. He just needs to be consistent, just chip away at that gap, and then make an assertive move when it matters, possibly around pit stop time.
Yeah, exactly. And with 2 pit stops, that is something we really do have to keep an eye on in this race. Who is going to play it smart and play the long game? Because there's no points for leading at the end of lap number 7 as we head onto lap number 8. There are points after 44 laps. So that's what Jake Burton needs to do. He's a bit far back in the championship now, just due to a few little incidents or whatever it might have been. So for him to get these points finishes on the board and making sure he keeps it clean, that is ideal for him. But he's well and truly on the back now on Forza Elnabi. That gradual catch-up that he has been doing over the last few laps has now landed him on the back bumper of Trixon Sports Commodore. And now it's about finding the weaknesses of Elnabi and where he can exploit that and get that position number 4.
Yes, indeed. And Forza Elnabi is a bit of an impenetrable wall, especially in these last few months, especially since joining Trick Sim Sports. He's shown himself to be an absolutely incredible driver, just as much, if not more so, than he was at Performance Sim Sports. So Burton's going to have to work hard to try and get by him here. And we all know that that Jake Burton is one of the more spirited drivers in the field when it comes to making those crucial moves.
Yeah, well, that's something you do have to be as a driver sometimes, and sometimes there are drivers that are maybe a bit too cautious to make moves or a bit timid at times, but Jake Burton's certainly not, and if there is a gap, he will commit to it, and that is something you do need from time to time as a driver, and that's something Burton does excel at. So we'll see what kind of opportunities present itself in the wake of Forza Elnabi's car, and Izzy gets very off the exit of the Ascari there. So Elnabi using all the road to try and break the slipstream, and he's just about done it. So under no pressure at all into Parabolica, but this main straight heading out of Parabolica is where all the moves I think we'll see in this race really be made up.
Yeah, certainly. Just in the background, I'm noticing Sam Blacklock made his way past Brenton Hobson, who seems to have not had the best lap so far, but meanwhile, that position for fourth is continuing to close up for Jake Burton, and I think there's a couple of hints here of Burton really taking his time with trying to make sure that this move is done. You know, I think an earlier Jake Burton would have tried to fire it up the inside on that occasion, but you could see he was just lifting off early, making sure that he got the braking down nicely, and he's just content to sit behind Elnabi until such a time reveals itself.
Yeah, and that's the best thing to do, and Jake has definitely matured this season in that regard. He's driving a lot smarter the last few rounds, hasn't been involved in as many incidents, so that's a very good thing for him to be doing. And we have seen how good he can be as a driver in wheel-to-wheel combat. So Burton can afford to take his time just a little bit here and see where a move does appear for Forza Elnabi. But he can't afford to wait too long, because in the background, with no draft assistance at the moment, is Ethan Grigault, who has been able to ditch the battle pack behind and is making some really nice inroads, as Muggleton actually finds himself under quite a bit of pressure. So a very strong qualifying for Josh Muggleton. We saw him in the slipstream of Madison Down to really hook up that qualifying for him, but now just finds himself struggling a little bit in the race trim. And Jake Maloney, who we've seen be so strong in AOSC, have some great drives, including from a behind win in the AOSC, now finds himself right underneath the rear wing, and I think we'll be looking to the inside, perhaps in the Parabolica, decides not to, but will most definitely have a move into turn one here, Reese.
Oh yeah, for sure. Maloney, you can tell, he's definitely smelling blood, and I think, oh, Burton to the pits.
Oh.
Ah,
okay,
interesting.
So strategy already being played here. So Jake Burton dives in at the end of lap number 10. So I think what he will be trying to do is now just do the race in two halves and make this two separate stints of about 17 or 18 laps. So a bit of a longer second and third stint for Jake Burton between his pit stops, but nonetheless, the undercut could prove pretty effective here if he doesn't get held up in traffic.
Yeah, that's it, and I think this is a very interesting ploy from Burton to try and get that undercut on Elnabi. Perhaps, well, that looked like a reasonable pit stop length from him, so we'll see what he can do from here. Honestly, that's with the battle with Elnabi, I definitely think that can factor into things. But Elnabi doesn't have much pressure from behind from any red cars, but from a certain white, black, and teal car, he is definitely starting to face the pressure. And I was going to say, before Burton jumped into the pits, Ethan Grigault, that's curious, just how much pace he's managed to pull out in these last few laps to gap those guys behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wonder if that was just due to Josh Muggleton being a bit off the pace, and he has now lost that spot to Jake Maloney. So Muggleton not quite having the pace we might have expected him to have in the race trim, and also not looking comfortable there as he slides his way out of Ascari. So he's just looking a little bit vulnerable. So that definitely would have helped Ethan build that margin. But there's also a lot of pace in that ERT Commodore itself, because half a second last time around is now visually in firing range of the Trick Sim Sport car.
Yeah, he certainly is, and I'll tell you what, the battling that Maloney and Muggleton are having is continuing to contribute to Ethan Grigault catching up to Forzan Elnabi, and a move almost on once again. Muggo trying to pass Maloney back here.
Yep, so we'll see what they do into turn number 1. Up the inside, Maloney on the rear brakes as well. Teammate tries to buy in it, and almost contact between the TTR and TTL cars, and that has hurt Maloney's run. And now look at Brady Myers. He's trying to fire into this as well. So the TTL Commodore, which is still an odd sight, makes its way past Jake Maloney, who is very off the pace, it has to be said, and Jordan Ross looking extremely threatening into the second chicane.
Yeah, certainly. You've got to remember Sam Blacklock is getting in on this as well. So, oh, wow, Maloney really struggling for rear end grip out of there. That was an incredible save to hold that. The car can get really leery through this section of the circuit. It relies more on mechanical grip. There's not as much downforce. Maloney, once again, a big slide. He's not doing his rear tires any favors over this lap.
No, not at all. And I have to say, I think that might be one of the core issues he's having here, is maybe even overheated his tires quite a lot, because from turn number 1, his car has not looked comfortable through a single corner. And we'll see if that continues through the direction change of Ascari, and indeed it does. That is horrible from the TTL car. That car is just... that is just not nice at all. But we will actually get a side-by-side replay up on screen now from an incident that happened on lap number 2. So we can see what happened down there, which we did see a bit of chaos, and it did involve the drivers of Thomas McMillan and also Daniel Williams, of course, former teammates, those guys, and also the other ASM driver of Ben Smith. So very unlucky for those drivers, as Maloney, his rear tires have cried enough here, Reese.
Oh, certainly. I think he's certainly recognized that that car has no more rear end to give, so he will give a new one to the car, as El Nabi and Greg Galt once again incredibly close. Oh, have a look at Brady Myers going through on Josh Muggleton round the outside into turn 1, but Muggo once again having a bit of a run. Myers is going to have the inside line for De La Roggia, though. Muggo struggling for grip over the curb. Tell you what, Muggo, one of the old guard as well. He's been around sim racing for a very long time. Myers, I think, is still a bit of a young gun, but Muggo, tell you what, it's just slipped up a little bit there, and that's going to be a slowdown. Myers is going to get through.
Oh, that's close. Almost into the side of Brady Myers. That was millimeter perfect stuff. Jordan Ross trying to buy in. Sam Blacklock also just getting a little bit of a feel for Jordan Ross at the moment, trying to see if he can make it move sideways on the exit. So I don't think he'll be able to get that done. But how lucky was Josh Muggleton not to turn Brady Myers?
Yeah, certainly. And that's experience speaking there from Josh Muggleton. He knows when to back out of a move. He is a GT Academy finalist and has done plenty of racing in real life as well. So he knows what it takes. And Brady Myers, I was going to say, he's you'd probably still class him as a bit of a young gun.
He can go up to the inside.
Oh,
and he's got the job done on Forza and El Nabi.
Yeah, he has too. So El Nabi is going to try and respond to that coming into turn 1, I would imagine, because Ethan certainly has no draft to speak of. El Nabi, on the other hand, look at the run he's got. Oh, he's actually thinking about staying behind. He is too.
And Brady Myers and Josh Muggleton for probably the 100th lap in this race, side by side into turn number 1, having to go the long way. We've seen Brady hold it around the outside before, but they're both so late on the brakes. They're both barely going to pull it up, and somehow they both make it through, but a little bit of contact. But a lot of drivers that time around did actually dive into the pits race, including Blacklock, Ross, and Brenton Hobson. Yes,
indeed. So the guys in the midfield are attempting to make something better of their races as of the present moment. Jordan Ross and Brenton Hobson, I'm interested to see what they can do from here, as I'm seeing another driver into the pits, Christopher Kessie, with some pretty major damage on that PRA machine.
Yeah, that car does not look pretty. No bonnet, no rear boot. It's a rear bonnet, if I'm going to be Jake Sperry. But Christopher Kessie, definitely not comfortable at all. So in the pits for repairs at the moment. So that's a shame to see. But we do see those drivers that did all pit together, including Ross and Blacklock and Hobson, all coming out together in a little bit of a pack as well. So that's ideal for them when they come out of the pits, because they all still have the draft on one another. And that's going to benefit them, especially if Muggleton and Brady Myers continue to fight as they are.
Yeah, certainly. All Muggo and Myers are doing at the moment is taking time off themselves and just serving it on a silver platter to the drivers behind them. Speaking of, Riley Blythe and Lee Ellis currently looking to get in on this, and both of those drivers up from midfield positions to run in the top 10. They should be coming into the pits very soon, and it looks to me like they certainly will. They're going to follow each other in, Blythe and Ellis, and actually Myers is going to go in as well. Muggo currently out there by himself.
And I'm not so sure that would be the right call for Josh Muggleton.
No.
We've seen him struggle a bit for pace in the early phase of this race, so getting the undercut, new tyres on early, and making the most of that really would have been beneficial for him. But instead, he's going to be one of the fewer cars in that sort of outside the top 5 range that will take their pit stops. So we'll see where Muggleton comes in. We could see this work quite well. I've definitely been wrong on strategy calls before, but from bird's eye view, that does not look ideal for Josh Muggleton.
No, it certainly doesn't. I mean, you got to remember, without a draft at Monza, you're basically a sitting duck. So the more he spends lapping on his own, the more difficult of a time he is going to have later on. So I would expect Muggo to come in at the end of this lap, at least.
Yeah, you would have to think so, but we also have to consider the top 3 in this race have not all pitted either. So a lot of drivers are electing to not pit at the moment. So there could be something in it. We could see them, of course, be a lot stronger later on in the race when the track is going to be even warmer. The tyres might be a bit worse, but also the track will be a bit more gripped up. So it's a bit of give and take at where you want your rubber the best and what kind of strategies you want to run. Because they are in clean air at the moment, is Josh Muggleton. He's not fighting with Brady Myers as he has been for so many laps in this race. But you would have to think they will pit very soon as race leader Jared Filsell does indeed come into the pits this time around.
He does indeed. Madison Down is going to stay out. What will Ian Ford do? He won't respond. He's going to stay out as well. So the top 3 at the moment, no draft to speak of. So all those guys are just lapping on their own, essentially, as Ethan and Forzan jump into the pits. So this is going to be crucial. Josh Muggleton staying out again. That's very curious.
This has to be some kind of different strategy, I would think, for Josh Muggleton at this point, especially with Filsell coming in. TTR are clearly comfortable with bringing their cars in at the moment, but Muggleton not one of those drivers responding to it, or perhaps he's just looking to come out in clean air at the moment because we don't know where all these drivers will come out. And with Filsell pitting with a lot of drivers still yet to pit, he does run the risk of finding himself in traffic when he did have a 3.5-second lead. So we'll see where he files back into the circuit, but he might just about be okay and come out around Jake Burton, who's on the front straight as well at the moment. And he's going to jump him. So Jake Burton, who was the very first car to come into the pits out of the entire field just about, is now ahead of effective race leader Jared Filsell.
That right there is what we were talking about with Burton's off strategy. Filsell's stop was 9 seconds slower than Burton's, so pretty crucial, honestly.
Car around the turn of 1 is Jordan Ross, and he's going to rejoin at the worst spot. Makes contact with Lee Ellis.
Oh no! And you know what? I saw that in the background. Jordan Ross. Actually, no, that was another Synergy Sim Racing car. It looks to me like there was a little bit of awkwardness coming through there as El Nabi exited the pits. It was actually contact with El Nabi that meant Jordan Ross spun around, and goodness me, that rejoin, that could have been better, honestly.
Yeah, not the best rejoin, but we'll leave it at that as we'll wait and see who elects to come to the pits this time around. It's not going to be Madison Down or Ian Ford. They're all electing to stay out, but Ethan Grigault has come out of his pit stop behind Jake Maloney, so I believe that might be a bit of a gain there for Maloney, who we did see struggling a bit. And he had a 6-second quicker stop as well, so that's what's benefited him. So just from these pit stops alone at the start, we've seen so many chops and changes as Jared Filsell immediately onto the gearbox of Jake Burton after being quite a fair way behind at turn 1.
Yeah, certainly. You can see that Filsell, with those fresh tyres, he's right on it, coming out of Parabolica on Jake Burton. 100%. That is the sign that Phil Sell is definitely on for an even strategy here. Jake Burton will have worked all of the grip out of his tires by now, and it's probably best for him at the moment to just stick behind Phil Sell, catch the draft, save a bit of fuel.
Yep, absolutely, and that's what it looks like he's going to do as Forza El-Nabi finds himself side by side with Brenton Hobson into turn number 1 and will get that position done. So El-Nabi just trying to clear a bit of traffic as Hobson has indeed pitted, actually. So that's actually a very nice little strategy call for Hobson, because El-Nabi was a fair way up the road from him. So nice little jump for Hobson there, and Brady Myers involved in this battle pack as well. So a lot of, there's so much chopping and changing from these first few pit stops at the moment, as it looks like Michael Schreier just had to miss the first chicane, and with quite a fair bit of damage, will now fall quite a fair way down this little battle pack.
Yeah, certainly facing a pass impending from Murray Hrushka, done quite easily. Just going back quickly to Forzan El-Nabi and Ethan Grigalt. I'll tell you what, El-Nabi's battle with Galt would certainly not have been helped by the contact that he had with Jordan Ross, and he is definitely on the back foot for the top 4, top 5 right now. So he's got Blacklock and Maloney now in between himself and his rival. They had the same pit stop time as well, so El-Nabi was it really hurt him, that incident.
Yeah, so there we go. But we do have Ian Ford in the pits, and also inside an All-Star Motorsports car, so not very PG there. But in the pit stops, he's trying to get some tyres on the car, and we'll see where he comes out in relation to everyone else, because he was, of course, one of the drivers that was a long way up the road from the battling for position number 4, but has waited a long time for his pit stop. So he leaves the box now, and we'll see where he slots in. Jake Maloney and Ethan Grigalt coming along the start-finish line now, and Ian Ford is going to come out behind Grigalt. How is he in regards to Maloney? Might be a bit tight, but he will be behind as well. So that's a very big jump for the likes of Maloney and Ethan Grigalt, but a much better tyre advantage for Ian Ford as Maloney kicks it up out of turn number 1.
Yeah, and just continues fishtailing for some way towards Curva Grande. And, oh no, Ian Ford with a slowdown. I thought he took a bit too much curb in turn 2, so that has not been optimal for him at all. Right out of the pits and getting a slowdown.
Yeah, that's pretty horrible for Ian Ford, because he was in a pretty good spot just behind Maloney, gets the slipstream, will be able to get past pretty soon, and all of a sudden that is taken away. And he has to get past Forzan El-Nabi, who's already fired up after that contact at turn number 1 and losing some spots. So this is not ideal at all for Ian Ford. So that's going to hurt him so much, as we still wait for a couple of drivers to come into the pits, one of which is Madison Down, who comes in this time around. Josh Muggleton will be your new race leader, still not having taken his pit stop.
Yes, indeed. So this is interesting how this may turn out, because Ian Ford, I think, was hoping that with that longer pit stop, he'd be able to go for a super long second stint and get the splash and dash at the end of the race. But I think the slowdown that he got will certainly not have helped him in that regard. I'm keeping my eye on Madison Down in the pits as he gets passed by Jared Filsell and by Jake Burton. So that's a pretty long stop from Madison Down as he now exits the pit lane.
Yep, so we'll see where he will rejoin, and Ethan Grigalt is going to get him pretty easily, it has to be said. So Ethan Grigalt making a lot of positions in this little pit stop phase, as just behind El-Nabi finds himself side by side with the driver of Jake Maloney, and will get that position just about. So move done for El-Nabi on the fresher tyres, and Maloney has to be a bit of a sitting duck here, as Ian Ford has so much fresher tyres that he can defend all he wants heading into Curva Grande. That position is always going to go, and a slowdown is not going to help that at all.
No, certainly not. Drivers, I think, are even ever more frequently starting to push the limits of the first chicane and get promptly slapped on the wrist for it. So Maloney, again, at a really bad part of this race, and he's just making some more mistakes as well. So I think Maloney just needs to step back a little bit, take stock, and then try and fight his way back up as he did in AOSC.
for the viewers of the Monday Night Official Series, a bit of a running joke we have is that Michael Taliancic does not like to come into the pit lane at all and loves to wait at the absolute last minute to come into the pits, and he's doing it once again and finds his way not into the pits. But Josh Muggleton does find his way into the pits after 18 laps. So those tyres would be absolutely shot to pieces, and we'll see if Mike Taliancic doesn't. Of course he doesn't. It's Mike Taliancic. He doesn't. Pit lanes are irrelevant to him, but Josh Muggleton stops on his box, and I'm very intrigued to see where he does factor out in this little battle pack, because he has waited an extremely long time, and I just wonder that even though he's going to have much fresher tyres than everyone else for the next 2 stints, he's going to come out in a lot of traffic, Reese.
Oh, he certainly is, and it's really going to make or break his race, I think, if he can try and get through that traffic cleanly, if he can avoid making any mistakes, getting off the track, getting slowdowns, because we've seen a lot of drivers slip up in that regard. He's still stopped and he is away. Okay, here he goes, as Jake Maloney gets into the pits. So, wait a minute, didn't he already pit?
Yeah, he absolutely has. So this is his second pit stop. And with 26 laps left in this race, he is...
he's out of the car!
No!
He's out of the car!
Oh, that is such a shame. He was one of the real dark horses to really be a contender in this race and has now left the session. So TTL, all their hopes are going to have to rely on Brady Myers now, but that is such a shame after what promising pace he had.
Wow. Fortunes can change in the blink of an eye, can't they? That is real heartbreak there for Jake Maloney. I think just a combination of the mistakes and the frustration and the slowdown. Maybe the pressure just got to him. Maybe there was a real life commitment that came up. We don't know. We may have to find out from him later on, but still, that is certainly not the result that he would have wanted going in.
Apparently he's been having big hardware dramas the last couple of laps, and he has immediately rejoined, so that would look to back that up. But what a shame that is.
That certainly is. I mean, hardware issues you can't do much about. It's a real shame to see that happen to Maloney. But Taliancic, lo and behold, coming into the pits, and Bo, I guess, Taliancic avoids the pits for the most part because, you're not going particularly fast in the pits. You go fast on the racetrack. But I guess the car runs out of fuel soon enough.
Absolutely. Well, every one of these drivers love to go fast, and Taliancic just wants to go as fast as he can for as long as he can, but he's going to be a weapon in the last few laps of this race with 25 left on the clock, and he can afford to just do a stint of 12 and 13 laps, so he's going to be very rapid and one to keep an eye on moving through the field, but I just think perhaps a little bit too long to really be beneficial into this race as Riley Blythe finds his way past the driver Brenton Hobson. So a great move from those two, the two Twitch streamers, as Hobson, of course, pretty much a veteran now of Twitch, as he's just recently started streaming, got a great following, and Riley Blythe just begun streaming, so be sure to check those two out after the broadcast if you wish. Madison Down finds his way right behind Ethan Gregault, and there is a bit of a tyre wear difference between these two of about 3 laps at the moment, so Ethan Gregault might have a little bit of trouble staying up, keeping ahead of Madison Down, but it's not all entirely possible.
No, yeah, certainly. The thing is, with Monza, tyre wear obviously is important around a track like this. We were talking about how many high load sections there are on the circuit, and of course you got to remember track temperature as well. It's going to eat tires for breakfast, but as long as you can stay within the draft, you do have half a chance of staying with someone. You don't immediately drop off the back of a driver if your tires are a couple of laps older than theirs are. But Madison Down certainly looking frisky coming into the braking zone for Parabolica. A little bit deeper under brakes as well, but no move in sight there. He's going to wait for the more probable overtaking spot of turn 1.
Yep, so we'll see how the run is out of Parabolica, and it looks very strong for the Trans-Tasman racing car, as they see if he decides to fan out, and indeed he does, straight down the inside, and Ethan not willing to put up too much of a fight at all as we head to turn number 1, and will he make it easy on the brakes? It looks easy enough. So there we go, Madison Down through into position number 3, And Ethan Rigot will now just try and sit underneath the rear wing and really capitalize from that slipstream.
Yeah, certainly. It looked like Ethan actually lifted a fraction of a second before just easing onto the brakes, and that's something that...
three wide, sorry.
Whoa!
McLeod and Muggleton and also Rizzo in the middle going 3 wide down the front straight. Not what you want to do, but amazingly they all make it through with Muggleton on top, Rizzo in P2, and McLeod having to settle for third in this little battle scrap, but 3 wide down the front straight at Monza race.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible. Monza has an incredibly wide front straight. The only thing you've got to worry about is how it narrows up towards turn 1. Fortunately, those guys were able to sort themselves out without too much drama.
Yeah, absolutely. So a great little exchange from those guys there. And Muggleton will certainly be flying through the field, because that was actually 2 moves in a single corner for him. He was the last of the 3 onto the front straight, and he was the first to exit it. So a great job from Josh Muggleton there. And on those new tyres, his next target will be driver Kurt Stenberg, his teammate, just a couple of seconds up the road. As the 2 friends, Sam Blacklock and Brady Myers, always doing a lot of stuff outside of V8SCOPS together. Good friends, but on the track there is definitely a rivalry brewing as they find their way side by side, heading towards the infamous Parabolica corner. And it's Sam Blacklock up the inside, but Brady definitely with the advantage at the moment on the outside, and a lot of pace braking on the grass. Not what you need, Reese.
No, certainly not. And he actually lifted a little bit before Parabolica as well. And I think the drivers are beginning to recognize now that they are in the middle stage of the race, it's certainly not beneficial to be going side by side through every corner on this lap. It's a lot more profitable to stay behind as long as you can. Get some draft, save some fuel. We say that all the time, but it works. It works so well, especially in these 250-kilometer races. But Brady Myers certainly going to start facing pressure from Riley Blythe soon if his pace is anything to go by. 51.9 for Riley, 52.18 for Brady. So look out for that purple ERT car.
Absolutely, and that's a very nice pace because these guys are pretty much all on the same tyre lap except for Sam Blacklock, who is 1 lap older, and that applies to Brenton Hobson as well. So pretty much respective tyre wears for all these drivers, but Riley Blythe absolutely hooking it up at the moment. And he's one of the drivers doing double duty, of course. If you are on the iRacing Esports Network and you do have more than one monitor, or perhaps you just want to do a split screen, we also have coverage of the iRacing 24 Hours of Le Mans, and Riley Blythe competing in both of those and doing a fantastic job in both as well. Finds himself in the top 10 in both, so that is definitely an achievement in itself here, Reese.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I suppose like the fact that iRacing has expanded their car and event lineup so much over the last couple of years in particular is really a testament to just see like how many drivers are multi-skilled, and drivers like Riley Blythe, you know, he'll race anything you throw at him, and it's good to see him having that level of success. Meanwhile, we're having a look now at Madison Down and Ethan Grigault, who are still very close together, and Ethan doing what I think we would expect him to, given his past record. He's sitting behind, he is fuel saving, he's making sure that he's there at the end.
Yep, and that's brilliant for him as he gets a little bit sideways to turn number 1, but keeps it well and truly under control. And of course, Ethan Grigault on a very different strategy to Madison at the moment. So the closer he stays in this stint, which is not the preferred stint for him, he is going to be very strong and much closer when it comes to his final stint. And he'll be able to launch a much better attack because he is, of course, on 3 lap older tyres. So the undercut will come his way in the final stint. So the closer he stays now, the more fuel he saves now, the less work he has to do later on in this race.
Yes, indeed. So coming up to the Lesmos for the 23rd time. We just passed half race distance, so looking forward to seeing what Ethan will do as Down, getting into the gravel just slightly, but still with a good run as Riley Blythe. Oh no, Riley Blythe around, and that is at the second chicane. What went on there?
His engine.
Oh no, how would you be, man? That is so crazy.
And he is parked off the circuit, so this should be all okay. But that is a disaster for Riley Blythe in the Porsche GTE at Le Mans. And that, of course, has downshift protection. No such thing in these V8 supercars. And just on the downshift, the commentator's curse, unfortunately. And all I can hope for Riley Blythe is that he doesn't blame it on the black rims.
Certainly not, but oh my lord, and you know what, that's another thing that's super heartbreaking in these cars, is the fact that it's very easy to blow an engine on the downshifts. You know, Lee Ellis had a bit of a reputation back in the big days of official V8 supercar racing a few years ago for constantly blowing his engines, but of course that's abated recently. Riley Blythe looks like he has been given permission from race control to exit, and he has elected to do that now. So, what a shame. Michael Schreier out as well. He's disconnected from the server.
Yep, so the hot conditions here at Monza putting its toll on not just the drivers and their grip levels, but also the drivetrain, gearbox, everything. But what we will do is give a little bit of a shout out to Bradley Ratu. Of course, we saw him take the victory in the Super Split 2 race, qualified 30th, and just continuing to march forward at the moment. He's only been on iRacing for a little while, Race, but this is fantastic progress in P number 18.
Yeah, certainly is. And you know, that the one thing that you really need to make sure of if you're making your debut in a series like this is to keep it clean, stay out of trouble. Meanwhile, Talyancic and Loxton are side by side. Brett Loxton was one of the cars involved in the lap 1, turn 1 dramas, but he's still in and around the top 25, and he's going to almost try and move on Talyancic, not able to quite get it done in the braking zone, but they're going to go side by side through the chicane. Have a look at Loxton round the outside. Supreme traction, supreme grip. That's the kind of move that you can pull off at the second chicane if you have the right mind about it.
And it wasn't the only move into the second chicane. Brad Ratu, as we were speaking about him, actually managed to get past Marie Krushka. Krushka tried to get back into the second Lesmo, but decided to back out at the last second. So lots of position changes happening at the moment, which is fantastic. But at the moment, Jake Burton slowly coming under a bit of pressure, not from anyone else, but his teammate, Madison Down. And we saw what happened last time at Interlagos race, where Jake Burton's actions managed to get into a bit of an incident with Madison Down, and all of a sudden they find each other on track once again.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And Burton is on incredibly old tyres. Remember, everyone, he was the first driver to pit, I believe, on lap 9 or thereabouts. So he has absolutely no grip left in that car. You can see him struggling with the wheels, struggling with the right foot to get that power down, to stay ahead. But Madison, a bit better grip, I think it would be in Jake Burton's best interests to let him go at the end of a straight or thereabouts.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll wait and see if any moves are done as it gets very close on the exit of the second Lesmo. Find themselves side by side, almost right under the rear wing of Jake Burton. That is as close as you want to get to your teammate on a straight, accelerating to 270 kilometers an hour. Burton eventually lets him go, but that was very close between two teammates, perhaps a bit closer than it needed to be. But Burton eventually made it easy as he slides his way out of Ascari. But Burton made it easy to his teammate heading into Ascari. Do you think Ethan Grigault, an Evolution Racing Team driver, will get the same treatment?
Oh, hell, no, certainly not. No way. I mean, that's just... you wouldn't even entertain the thought. Jake Burton, though, he might be going for the pits this time round. No, it's so misleading how the drivers take that tight line out of Parabolic. You think, oh, they're going for the pits, and then they're like, nope.
Well, we will keep our attention forward as Josh Moulton actually gets his way past Kurt Stenberg. But Ian Ford doing a good job over the last few laps just to keep the pressure on Fords in El Nabi. And these two are on slightly different...
That's certainly not going to be optimal for Ian Ford. A little almost half spin coming into turn 1. Sorry about that, Bo.
No, absolutely not. But not ideal at all for Ian Ford as he finds his way up himself a long way from Fords in El Nabi and a whole lot closer to Wayne Burke, who is well out of sequence here. But with a very damaged car, he still looks like he has very strong pace. And well and truly keeping up with these two fighting in front.
Yeah, certainly. It's quite a interesting battle eventuating between these guys as we look again at Ethan Grigault and Jake Burton. So Ethan with the better pace, the better car, 100%. And have a look at Jake Burton. You see what he's doing here. Is he going to get the same treatment as Ethan? No way. Jake Burton actually just leaving him enough room there.
Oh.
Almost contact between those guys, and Burton now acting as a rear gunner for Madison Down, try and halt Ethan Grigolt's progress through this race. So Down really benefiting.
Yeah, absolutely. Down is definitely going up at the moment, and he's pulling away rapidly as Grigolt looks about the inside just for a moment there into Parabolica, backs out of it as Burton does not have the grip to meet the apex as he wants. And look at the mid-corner speed for Grigolt. Doesn't quite get the traction, but now he does. And it's just going to be as easy as that as Burton retires, throws the white flag, and wants in for some new Dunlops.
That's exactly right. So he is going to jump in, get some fresh boots on that car, and enjoy the supreme benefits of fresh tires. And he did his duty just then. And he did it just in time too. He halted Ethan Grigolt's attacks on Madison Down, and now Grigolt's going to have to do all of that work again to try and catch back up to the 77.
Yeah, absolutely. But he is out of sequence and he is on older tyres, so he might struggle a little bit, but he will be very strong in the second half, or in the final part of this race, when drivers come in for their final pit stops, which we have to start thinking about a little bit, as Jake Burton has taken his final pit stop, just waiting for him to come off the jacks at the moment, as Jordan Ross now looks for a move on Sean Kelly through the Curva Grande, and the damage on Ross's car not slowing him down too much, but it might be a bit easy without the damage, because the driver of Sean Kelly just able to fight it out a little bit, very late on the brakes, and does still make the apex to the second chicane. So very nice attack back from Sean Kelly, and Jordan Ross going to have to wait yet another lap.
Yeah, he certainly is, and you know, that looked like very intentional backing out of the move from Jordan Ross. I think he's very content to stay behind Sean Kelly for the most part, but if he's going to get a draft and a move presents itself, I mean, not many of us would say no, would they? Freddie Myers and Sam Blacklock, meanwhile, still together.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brady has been very close over the last few laps to Sam Blacklock, but never really looked like him making a move. So I definitely think for Brady Myers at the moment, this is just fuel saving and trying to keep the fuel low so he can be much quicker in the final phase of this race. As we'll see if Blacklock died in the pits. Nope, this time it's me getting caught out by the lines they're taking through Parabolica. But Brady definitely looks content just to follow the Trans-Tasman racing car at the moment. And we'll wait and see how the pit stops play out between those two.
Yep, Brenton Hobson going for the pits, as I'm just noticing a battle with Jamie McKnight and Gene Fiddies, the Gene Genie, as Mr. Sperry likes to say, and Fiddies is through on McKnight. These guys all involved in their own little battle for the final position in the top 20. Michael Cracknell there as well. So McKnight, having been passed at Parabolica, that's Murray Hrushka going into the pits behind them. So these guys battling quite hard at this stage of the race. McKnight going for a huge dive. Is that too late? No, he's managed to pull it up, and I think Fiddy's actually lifted a little early for that. You could see that coming a mile away.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And a mile away was just about how far Jamie McKnight was, as Gene Fiddies, you know, the black stuff is the faster part of the track, as he easily allows cracking through with a little bit of lawn mowing. And the PRA car will have to settle for another position lost on this lap. So not the best start to lap number 28 for Gene Fiddies, but nonetheless, still in the draft, every chance to come back.
Yes, certainly. Gene Fiddies, having started from 24th, in fact, all of these guys started quite a few positions back from where they actually are now. So they're all doing pretty good, as we're taking a look at the pack now behind Kurt Stenberg. Just behind him is Josh Muggleton and Ross Rizzo. Now, Josh Muggleton, he's really fallen down the order in the last few laps. Of course, he did take his first pit stop, it seems, on lap 19. So we should be looking at another one fairly soon. But for now, it looks like he's content to stay in the draft as Stenny.
Well, that was the thing, is that Muggleton was actually the driver that led onto this lap, and Stenberg got passed, but he's not passed anymore because he'll come into the pits and follow Lee Ellis. So the two Trans-Tasman racing cars come into the pits, but yeah, Muggleton's definitely not been his usual self, I assume you could say, as he's just struggled a little bit in race pace, and he's got Ross Rizzo behind at the moment, who I believe is on much older tyres by the rate of about 3 laps. So Muggleton should have the pace advantage there, but the driver in front of him now is Sam Blacklock, as Brady Myers is pitted, and that is a big margin for him to hunt down his teammate.
Yeah, it certainly is. So, I mean, Muggo, he did have that abnormally long first stint, exceeded only by Mr. No Pit, Michael Taliancic, but it's what happens at the end of the race that I think is the main thing we will focus on. Of course, depends on you getting to the end first. It's very easy to make a mistake around here and in these cars, so eyes on Muggleton. But just briefly looking at Rizzo in number 784, he started in 20th and he is now in the top 10, so pretty mega run.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've seen this so many times from Rizzo. No matter where he qualifies, and he is a strong qualifier, but no matter where he qualifies, he always manages to find a way through the field, whether it's through strategy or just through sheer race pace and race craft. So he's always very, very competitive in his races, and has taken to a duck to water to Scops this season, which I believe is his first proper crack at the series. So doing a very nice run as Jared Filsell makes his way into the pit lane.
Yes, indeed. Sorry to interrupt you there, Bo. Jared Filsell taking his stop there, and following him in, actually, Forzan El Navi and Sam Blacklock. So these guys taking their second and final stops. Filsell away. Now, where is he going to come out? Miles ahead of Burton, it seems. And Jamie McKnight also coming into the pits as well, Adam Wyborn. So the second pit stop phase is well and truly in motion. And have a look at Jake Burton. He's just crossed the line to start his 30th lap. You can tell that that second stint, that long second stint, did no favors for him. But Forzan El Navi getting out ahead of him, ahead of Burton. So, yeah, it seems Jake Burton's race, it really all hinges on this last pit stop.
Absolutely. So he's got a lot of ground to make up if he's going to make any progress in this race. And wasn't the only position change in the pit stops, as Brady Myers has well and truly found his way past Sam Blacklock as well, who were close before the pit stop. So once again in the pit stops, we're seeing some very dramatic swings in positions between a lot of the drivers. So these pit stops are really shaking this race up at the moment. But for Jake Burton, this race has probably not gone anywhere near to plan that he would have liked.
Yeah, certainly not. I mean, we all thought it was curious that he took his first pit stop as early as he did. So I don't know, maybe he was banking on a safety car or something like that as Greg Galt goes into the pits.
Yeah, that's very possible. And, you know, sometimes when you do make those risky choices to bank on a safety car, sometimes they can pay off golden. Sometimes it just ends up with you falling so far down the order. And I think that might just be what's happened here for Jake Burton, who continues to find himself in traffic as well. So just about everything that could go wrong for Burton in this final phase of the race is happening by the looks of it. But we will continue to see how his progress goes, as we do know his pace can be extremely strong. But Josh Muggleton finds his way into the pits, as does Ross Rizzo. So those two were very close before the pit stops as well. So we'll see how these drivers come out, as Ethan Grigalt finds his way out of the pit lane. Filsell already well and truly into turn number 1, but where is Madison down?
He's coming through the Lesmo turns on his lap 31. So, tell you what, Ethan Grigalt losing out quite a bit relative to down, as noticing El Nabi actually getting quite close as Brent Loxton. Oh, he made a little bit of a mistake there into turn 1, certainly not optimal, as I see in the background Burton going side by side with Taliancic. And Michael not making it easy for Jake here, but Jake's going to hold it around the outside through Curva Grande, and that is going to be move done. He's going to go defensive anyway, just to cover him off.
Yep, better safe than sorry, especially with the pace advantage he has and how old Kaliani's tyres are. Getting the job done early is what Berta needs to do, and immediately trying to make progress on Brett Loxton, and does. So Loxton, even though he is racing for position against the Jake Byrne at the moment, not willing to put any fight just with the difference in tyres, as Madison Down can for another lap, so he's not electing to pit just yet in his fight with Ethan Gregolt. But the other car of Ian Ford will dive in this time around, so we'll see where he factors in back after his pit stop.
Yep, for sure. And you know what? I somehow get the feeling that Ian Ford may get a speeding in pits penalty, because he came into the pits very hot, actually locked up, and was at 97 kilometers an hour at the pit-in cones. So, probably not the way he would have wanted that to go.
Oh dear, I've just seen it, and yeah, that is a very opportunistic pit entrance, unfortunately. So we'll wait and see how it goes. Sometimes if you do slow down in the pits a bit afterwards, you can actually clear it, but that was very committed from 40, and he is still being held, so that would have to be a 15-second penalty. So unfortunately, even though he's got 15 on his car, he's seeing too many 15s and has to leave the pit lane a long time after his fuel is completed. And he's going to come out even behind Brady Myers and Sam Blackwell.
Yeah, wow, that's absolutely ruined the running that Ian Ford was in at that time. It's a shame. That could have been a top 5 for him. So, oh well, move on and try and salvage the best result you can from this. But he's got Brady Myers and Sam Blacklock, two younger drivers who are incredibly hungry. Actually, they're quite ahead of him. Actually, my apologies. The car I'm looking at is Josh Muggleton just behind him. So Ford could be facing a bit of pressure here.
Yeah, absolutely, and that just shows what one little mistake can do as Madison Down dives his way into the pit lane. But that's just proves how costly little mistakes can be in this championship, and whether it's just missing an apex slightly or having a spin or getting a speeding penalty, every little thing you do does matter in this championship and has big consequences. And unfortunately, this has just been very painful. And Josh Muggleton, you know, he's got older tyres at this point, but if he can perhaps, you know, take advantage of Ian Ford being stuck behind Brenton Hobson as he dives to the inside, doesn't wish to be stuck behind for any longer, but will have to sit behind through Ascari. You can see there Muggleton just able to close up absolutely miles under the braking zone and through the first Ascari complex. That, you know, Ian Ford could very well come under pressure from Josh Muggleton very quickly if he can't get the move done on Hobson soon.
Yeah, well, soon could be as soon as Parabolica, because out goes Ford and straight up the inside, and Hobson, with being the very observant driver that he is, saw him coming and let him go. So Hobson's running his own race here. I think he recognizes there's no point in fighting Ian Ford too hard. But these guys are now in their own little draft pack, and Ian Ford going preemptively defensive. You can see Muggleton going for the move on Hobson, but just pulling out of it. So now Ford, I think, is just hoping that Hobson gives Muggo a hard time.
Yeah, well, for Josh Muggleton, this move's going to be pretty critical now if he's going to have any chance of taking the fight to Ian Ford. He has to get past Brenton Hobson pretty much immediately. You can see there he's just positioning the car a bit... Okay, I was going to say a bit wide, but that's a bit to the extreme of wide. And that has just ruined any chance of getting the job done into the second chicane. See if he can set something up into the Lesmo too far back, despite the little slide for Hobson, the continuing slide, which just continued on and on after the exit. And that does actually, in the end, allow Muggleton to slide up the inside and gets the job done. But in the process, Ian Ford has just built a little margin. Now, might just be Ian Ford's saving grace.
Yeah, certainly. That's the kind of gap that Ian Ford needs. And, you know, just out of the pits on these fresh tyres, he really stands a chance of gapping Muggleton. But Muggleton's tyres are only a lap or two older than Ford's are. So the margin between these guys is going to be very, very close. Meanwhile, Jared Felsell just checking in with our leader. He is so far in the lead, it's almost insane. 11.7 seconds at the line ahead of Madison Down, and Felsell has been basically untroubled, and this is shades of the Phil Cell we saw at the start of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. He's back to his absolute dominant self, and what really set up what his current lead is at the moment is, by all means, his opening few laps of this race where he just managed to pull big margin on Madison down, break the slipstream early, and really just control it from the front at that point. So classic Jared Phil Cell, and really being able to just extend that lead in the last few laps as Muggleton finally gets the job done on Brenton Hobson once again, as those two continue their scrap and chopping and changing in just about every corner. But that has really relinquished any chance that Muggleton had at getting past Ian Ford, who now sets his sights on Sam Blacklock. And last time around, 9/10 of a second in the favor of Ian Ford. So Sam Blacklock might expect a visit from Ian Ford very soon.
Yeah, he certainly could. Sam Blacklock, when did he pit? He pitted 4 laps ago. So that's enough of a margin for the tyre life to certainly mean something. And you got to remember, Sam Blacklock qualified 8th, Ian Ford qualified in 3rd. So in terms of one-lap pace, Ford is definitely the better driver at the moment. So be interesting to see what happens there. Meanwhile, I'm looking further back at another developing battle. Ross Rizzo, we saw him making a very good run into the top 10, but he's taken his second pit stop, obviously, and now he's back into 14th, having to defend from Lee Ellis and Kurt Stenberg.
Yeah, well, Rizzo does have the newest tyres in this battle pack, but with no draft in front, it's going to be very difficult to use those tyres how he would like. And Lee Ellis, the fan favourite, as it were, from the YouTube chat, continuing just to put a little bit of pressure on Ross Rizzo. Not quite close enough to try and move anytime soon, but the pressure is still there, filling the mirrors wherever he can, just to unsettle the driver at any given point in time. So we'll wait and see what can happen as Kurt Stenberg just waiting in the background as well for any little slip-up from the two in front. But this is definitely a little battle pack to keep an eye on.
Yeah, definitely is. They're kind of spread out now, but we'll see what happens in the next 10 laps, as for those guys, there are 10 laps to go in the race. As we like to say at V8s Online, the field is cleansed. All drivers have taken their stops, and it's going to be pretty much racing to the end.
Yep, which is exactly what we love to see, and this is where all the strategies begin to play out. Who's got pace, who doesn't have pace, who's got tyre life, who doesn't have tyre life. And at the moment, I think the answer to who doesn't have tyre life is Sam Blacklock, or at least not using his tyre life as well as he could, because Ian Ford has hunted him down rapidly. And it was a second last time around, so 1.9 seconds in 2 laps from Ian Ford is a solid effort. But as the old adage goes, Reese, it's catching is one thing, passing is quite another.
Yes, and Sam Blacklock, he's a super quick guy, he is, and he can certainly race with the best of them. But Ian Ford, very much an experienced driver behind him, and with those slightly better tyres, better one-lap pace, I think it's going to be on into Parabolica at this rate. Have a look at the run that Ford has got out of Ascari, and Blacklock not going defensive. So Ford pulling out. Let's see if he can get the move done. Slowly getting up the inside, and away he goes. Blacklock on the marbles with no defense at all. Except maybe for the exit.
Yeah, exactly. On the exit, he's immediately onto it. And we'll see if he's willing to take the fight to Ian Ford, or if he's content just to sit behind and try and catch the few in front. But from this, I'm going to assume they're going to go to the Daytona 500, because it is back to bumping down the front straight, and Blacklock does back out of it in the end. So he's content to sit behind, but literally right behind.
Yeah, certainly. You couldn't even fit a sheet of paper between those guys. Probably a sheet of paper a few microns thick. Certainly. I don't really know what the point of that was. I mean, bump drafting is not against the rules in V8SCOPS, but there wasn't. I don't think there was much benefit to be gained from that, as those guys are very much on their own. Nonetheless, gave us a bit of entertainment, something to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, I'm just looking at the YouTube chat, is one of our regular commentators, Cam Dance, just saying that apparently Jake Burton is fuel saving just a little bit. And of course, he had that extremely, he had that pit stop that was a bit out of sequence to everyone else at the start. So he's sort of on the back foot from everyone else. So we'll just jump on board for you now And we'll just see what he is doing. And yeah, he's fuel saving very dramatically. So Jake Burton in all kinds of trouble with 8 laps to go, well, 8.5 laps to go. So a long way out at the moment. And he has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, he does, and he's already taken both of his pit stops, so he's fuel saving to the end. There's no kind of there's no master strategy stroke to come yet from Burton, so yeah, very much in trouble. That is quite a shame because you know, he should be able to hold on to, I'd say, oh god, I'd say maybe a top 10 at this rate if he keeps losing pace like he is, but still, it could have been a top 5.
Yeah, it could have been absolutely so much more for him, and just hasn't panned out in that way. But massive margins being taken out at the moment by Brady Myers, 7/10 last time around. So Brady really taking advantage of Jake Burton's current situation, and as it was between Ian Ford and Sam Blacklock, there's going to be a visit very soon for Jake Burton, and Brady Myers is coming quick.
Yeah, he certainly is. Brady Myers, 151.618. Jake Burton has been lapping mostly in the 52s, starting, you know, his first couple of laps were in the mid-50s out of the pits, but then his lap times really went down, and he's been in the 52s on the last lap, and you see Myers just creeping up slowly, corner after corner. And Jake Burton with a little bit of a mistake. The exit of the Lesmos, that is not going to help him at all. So Burton's slide down the field, I think, definitely begins now.
Yeah, absolutely. He does not look comfortable, and he's having a fuel save very, very much. So we don't know how critical he is. We don't know if he's just trying to do some saving now and save the rest of the field to fight later. But we will have to have the answers very shortly as we head to just 7 laps to go. And Brady continues his charge, just clawing time, bits and pieces everywhere out of the Trans-Tasman Racing Momo-sponsored car. So Jake Burton, it's going to be very tough for him to defend this. We know he's going to try to defend. He's one of those racers that's always willing to put up a fight. But this is going to be a very tough fight, and he's going to have one hand tied behind his back, absolutely. As he comes around the line, we'll see what kind of lap times he's doing this time. It's a 52.6. He's getting slower, Reese.
Oh, goodness. That is not the kind of lap time you would expect from that car 35, and lifting off incredibly early into the first chicane. And Myers, you can see, with no fuel troubles in the back of his mind, he's closed right up to the bumper of Jake Burton in just those first 2 turns. So who knows, could be a move into the second chicane.
We will have to see, but last time around it was 1.3 seconds in the favor of Brady Myers, so it's just getting easier and easier, and you can see that how early he's lifting. That does give a bit of a sniff to Brady Myers, and Burton will slam the door in his face. And I said that Brady Myers was going to give Jake Burton a bit of a visit, but Jake Burton not welcoming the visit at all, and trying to hold on. But this is just has to surely be a case of when, not if.
Yeah, certainly. I think Myers just wasn't far up enough on Burton to try and get that move done at that time. But you know, if he focuses on his corner exits, makes sure that that he hits his braking points at exactly the right times, he will be able to get by much, much more easily, possibly on the next lap. Well, other than that, I can see that the battle for 11th, that's Ross Rizzo, Kurt Stenberg, and Lee Ellis, is pretty much at a stalemate right now. Rizzo has gapped those 2 TTR cars.
Yeah, at the moment, absolutely. So a fantastic job there, and really trying to make his steps forward. So really good effort there. And just with the top 3 as well, Philosell is slowly beginning to just lose a little bit of time to Madison Down, but nothing dramatic at all. So Madison Down still very strong pace and looks under no threat from Ethan Grigalt. So looks like our podium might almost be just about set, apart from the final step, as Forzan Nabi has been doing a very nice effort over the last few laps and is just staying with Ethan Grigalt at the moment, and it was actually a 10th faster last time around. So Forzan still very much trying, as Burton eventually gives up the spot, almost thinks about fighting it, and that was a very tight line through the chicane there, and using every inch of time that he can. So he thought about fighting it, but he doesn't have much when it comes to the braking zones, and once again just getting a little bit slower again. So He's going to fight it back here, but he's going to have to surely lift off a little bit to save fuel. And he's not going to be able to commit. He still tries, but eventually just has to throw the white flag. And he has to start thinking about Ian Ford and not doing so much of the drifting.
Yeah, certainly. Ian Ford, I think, will be by him in no time at that rate. He's really struggling with the rear-end grip on that car. You can see how it's moving around on the exits of pretty much every corner around here. And Ian Ford absolutely on a charge right now. A little bit of a mistake from Ian Ford, which has ruined his run down the straight. But I tell you what, it's as you said, a matter of when, not if, Bo. Just while that's going on, we'll check in on the battle for 20th as well, because that's still on in the final laps. It's actually a four-way battle at the moment. Jane McKnight, Gene Fiddies, Brett Loxton, and Michael Cracknell. And Loxton on the charge compared to the rest of these guys. He managed to take out 6/10 on Cracknell in the last lap.
Yeah, that is a pretty dramatic margin there for Brett Loxton. And he's in the Ford this time, which I think is a bit of a difference. I'm pretty sure he's normally in the Holden. But regardless, making good use of it behind the back of another Ford in the respect of Gene Fiddy, side by side now towards the Ascari complex. And that's going to be pretty easy. Gene just giving that up. And Brett Loxton with just insane pace at the moment. The speed that he can carry at the moment is just flying. And just making it work as Jamie gets a big slide on the exit. As, we have drama, and it's getting worse.
Oh, goodness me, that was certainly suboptimal. We are going to have another look at that for sure. So Ian Ford tried to go for the move on Jake Burton, actually got on the brakes reasonably at the same time, and I don't know, I think it was a case of both drivers probably could have done something a bit differently there. Ian Ford went in a bit deep, lost the rear. Jake Burton turned in, I think, expecting there to be a little more room on the outside than there was.
And he's got to slow down to boot now as well. He was fighting to defend from Ian Ford and Brenton Hobson, and Muggleton there gets himself into a slowdown. So this entire battle pack is a little bit all over the place as Burton almost spins it out of the second Lesmo. And that was a huge recovery there as well. And Ian Ford now will be able to get back into the slipstream and have another crack at making the move work into turn number one. But for Jake Burton, that's just, being so tight on fuel, minus 100 almost in regards to fuel, trying to make it to the finish and really trying to defend for all he has to make positions. But it's one of those cases where in that respect, it would have been better just throw the white flag and concede that place.
Yeah, certainly. I definitely agree with you. But at the end of the day, it's all the way up to the drivers what they do, and I suppose that was a last-ditch attempt by Burton to sort of try and defend something, a position of some kind. God, from Ian Ford! Hey, hold on! Goodness me, that I don't think that is too warranted. But they're going to go side by side down the front straight, and Jake Burton going majorly defensive here against Ian Ford, so really giving him a hard time at the moment.
And I don't think this is particularly smart for Burton, because what he's just done is allowed the drivers of Hobson and Muggleton back into this train, despite them having their own issues on the last lap. So now if Burton does indeed have another issue or just makes a little mistake, there are so many more cars that can just freight train him through the complex as Ian Ford looks to the inside, can't make anything happen. But this is just going to get worse and worse potentially if Jake Burton continues to lose pace and continues to defend as hard as he can, because the likes of Ross Rizzo and Kurt Stenberg, although a long way behind at the moment, there is every chance with the pace Burton's holding at the moment, they can be there in just 3.5 laps time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think Ian Ford's recognised by now that Jake Burton is not going to make this easy for him at all. So if he's going to stick it up the inside and make a move, he's going to have to be super assertive. Burton going defensive again and not leaving him enough room. Now he is, but Ian Ford stuck on the outside, and Burton is basically a brick wall at the moment, not yielding at all to Ian Ford. So what's going to happen into Parabolica? Remember, Jake Burton is extremely conscious of saving the tyres and fuel of his car, but I really question the wisdom of defending against Ian Ford so hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that just the pace that Ford has on the exit, giving him a bump as well. And that's checked Ford up. So now Brenton Hobson comes into the play here, and he's trying to make something work on the outside.
He's holding them up for Muggleton. That's what he's doing. He's holding them up for Muggleton.
Oh, and that is a huge block, not holding his line at all. Ian Ford looks to the inside, and this is just beginning to get a little bit messy as they go side by side into turn number 1, and almost a bump there into the back. From Ian Ford, as Hobson does make the position work. Contact on the exit.
Oh, come on.
And Burton is driven off the road. Well, Hobson's driven off the road as Burton just defending for his life and perhaps over aggressively. And I have to say the stewards need to be looking at this point.
Yeah, that was too overzealous from Jake Burton. That was completely unwarranted. Like I understand the frustration if Ian hit you into turn 1, of course. That's, you know, that would have been partially Ford's fault for sure, but everything that has just transpired, I think, was completely unnecessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jake Burton's still continuing to slide, so we'll only assume that he's going to go even further backwards. As well, if his tactic was to bring that Muggleton back into this fight, that does work, because Muggleton is a little bit closer to Ford now and is in the slipstream, so we'll see how that battle transpires. But Rizzo, well and truly, beginning to buy himself into this fight as well. And Jake Burton is going to come under pressure very quickly from Brenton Hobson, I can think.
Yeah, certainly. And, well, Jake Burton struggling for rear grip once again through Ascari. And, wow, you know, it's a bit of a strange end to the race for these guys, but we've only got 2 laps to go up the front, less than 2 laps, as Jared Filsell. Oh, hang on a minute, it is on for third, as Ethan Griggolt and Forzen Elnabi are continuing to battle. It was a gap actually closed by 6/10 last lap. That's interesting.
Yeah, so Forzen just reeling the gap in just a little bit last time around, and really pushing as he gets into the grass just a little bit through Curva Grande. So maybe there's a fuel issue for Griggolt, or perhaps just didn't quite get his line right, as he's definitely been closed in by the Trixton Sports car. And meanwhile, Jake Burton does lose the spot to Brenton Hobson eventually, and his car getting very loose in all kinds of weird places. So this could be tyres playing a factor as well. So Ross Rizzo is still very much in a shout, as he's currently running 3 seconds quicker, and the gap currently stands at only 2.5. So definitely Ross Rizzo's position to gain at the moment as we head to a lap and a half for race leader Jared Filsell.
Yes, indeed. Filsell, major lead at the moment. Once again,
the battle for number 18 very much on. Loxton and Postlethwaite were very close, as well as Sean Kelly's in the wall. He is around, so he's been fighting so hard in that battle pack, and he eventually finds his way around. And that was also with Loxton as well involved in that as well, because they were 3 wide into turn number 1 with a lot of drivers. McKnight was another one very much defending, and I don't quite see how it transpired, but in the end, Sean Kelly well and truly punted out.
Yeah, it was McKnight, unfortunately, made contact with Kelly and spun him around on the exit of turn 1, so that is super unfortunate. Kelly was fighting incredibly hard there, but that is going to be that basically sorted, as our leader is on his final lap of the race. And if you want to talk about a return to form, this is certainly it. Filsell's run over the last 3 races, or last, well, probably in excess of 3 rounds of the season, certainly left something to be desired when you consider his past performances, but I think the Filsell that we know is back here.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been such a dominant performance from him, as Muggleton finds his way past Ian Ford, but overshoots. And Ian Ford is going to more than likely get the position back as Muggleton takes the escape road, and Brenton Hobson could buy his way into this as well if Muggleton does not get up to speed too soon, but it looks like he might just about be okay as Jake Byrne continues to save fuel in the slipstream. But that was all a little bit messy there into the first turn, But looks like those positions will stay as Burton thinks about a move on Brenton Hobson. Has to back out as race leader Jared Filsell heads to Parabolica, Reese.
Yes, he does. Oh, Hobson, sorry, actually messed up the exit of the second chicane, so that battle is still going on, but Jared Filsell coming out of the exit of Parabolica to take an absolutely dominant victory, hangs the tail out on the exit of the corner. So the Italian 250 will go to the championship leader. An excellent performance.
Absolutely brilliant there. Madison Down will bring it around the final corner. He'll do a bit more drifting as well to make it a
Burton
1
Hobson.
and 2. But Burton Hobson still well and truly on as Hobson looks to the inside of Ascari. Burton clearly has the fuel sorted at this point and will get that job done on Hobson. But Harry's tyres, you've seen him slide through Ascari the last few laps, continues it once again as everyone else just crossing the line. Looks like no fuel dramas for anyone else. And Rizzo now trying to buy his way into this fight as well on Hobson. So we'll see if Rizzo has anything in the final corner. Doesn't elect to go for a move yet. But this run to the finish line is going to be all important, as we'll see if Burton is going to start coughing at all. And he is going to start coughing, I think. No, just a slow exit, so he might be okay, as Hobson trying in the slipstream to hold off from Ross Rizzo. It's going to get very close. A bit of a bump there at the finish line. But those positions will stay just about as they were, Reese.
Yeah, and I noticed a bit more overzealous defending from Jake Burton on the entry to Ascari. I think the frustration was getting to him a little bit there. Glenn Postlethwaite smoking. So he's got major engine issues, and there's a battling pair behind him. Oh dear. Here we go. Goodness me. Hang the tail out, Adam.
Oh, they've all gone off. So Hrushka might just about get this. She's going to get both of them in the final corner, as Wyborn should have had that pretty easily in the end, but just manages to lose out with Postlethwaite, who was just a little bit off the pace with his engine dramas, and did get those spots lost. So fantastic. As the last few drivers make their way to the line, including the two Progression Racing Australia cars of Kessie and Alex Greenwood to the line. No position swaps there, so that's just about it. But Reese, that was a very dramatic final lap of that race.
It certainly was, you know, strategy, drama. That's the kind of stuff that V8SCOPS has become known for, and that race certainly provided it in spades. So, race results now up on screen. Jared Filsell by 12.2 seconds from Madison Down takes another dominant victory. Ethan Griggault rounding out the podium. A great performance from him from 9th. Forzan El Nabi finishing in 4th, with Brady Myers making it all the way to 5th. Good performance there, flying the flag for TTL after Jake Maloney had his technical issues. Sam Blacklock in 6th, Ian Ford down from 3rd to 7th. Tell you what, if it weren't for that speeding in pits penalty and the drama with Jake Burton, he probably could have finished much higher. Josh Muggleton in 8th, Jake Burton finishing in 9th, with Brenton Hobson rounding out the top 10. Few things for the stewards to look at there, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing for them to look at, I don't believe, for Ross Rizzo, who just misses out on the top 10, brings it home in P11. Kurt Stenberg for P number 12 had his own little drama in that race. Lee Ellis, the fan favorite in the YouTube chat, in P number 13. Jordan Ross and Mitch McLeod, your top 15, with Bradley Ratu having a fantastic debut in top split after taking out the super split number 2 race win. Brings it home in 16th from 30th on the grid. An absolutely masterful drive. Michael Taliatic probably didn't pit very often at all, but he does bring it home in P number 17 with Brett Loxton, Gene Fiddies, and Scott Sosleski, your top 20.
Jamie McKnight coming into the pits at the moment is going to finish in 21st position. A good improvement from him. Michael Cracknell in 22nd. Marie Hrushka actually losing out, having to settle for 23rd, but she got a couple extra positions on the last lap, so not all bad there. Adam Wyborn in 24th, with Glenn Postlethwaite in 25th position, his engine going pop on the last lap. Andrew Fraser in 26th from 34th. Good run. Sean Kelly, wow, what can you say? He had a lot of potential there, but unfortunately in the last few laps, it just all unraveled for him. Christopher Kessie finishes where he started in 28th. 29th will go to Alex Greenwood, and the first car a lap down, Henry King.
Wayne Burke would unfortunately come into issues during the race, finishing 13 laps down. Riley Blythe had his engine say no more and finishes down in 32nd. Michael Schreier and Jake Maloney both had issues pretty early on in the race, unfortunately, with Daniel Williams, Benjamin Smith, Thomas McMillan, and Chris Robinson, the 38 V8 supercars that took to the 44 laps, but not all of them finished. But regardless, it was a fantastic race to the end for our mid-pack race.
It certainly was. Battles all throughout the field for sure. We're going to go on another quick break, but do not go away. We're going to get our driver interviews in the commentary box very, very soon. You are watching the Virtual Racing School V8 Supercar Online Premier Series on the iRacing Esports Network.
So what are you afraid of? Those feelings are made up. For anyone asking who is the best, we putting our hands up.
4 more kilometers. Oh, there we go! They caught!
This time, like the last time, I'm moving so fast, I'm ready to ride this.
Okay! Down to the inside and Lucy's off!
Passenger throws the block, and he will keep him behind him.
So, you want to race in NASCAR. The road starts here. Introducing the eNASCAR Ignite Series powered by iRacing. This is the gateway for all aspiring 13 to 16-year-olds. Starting June 20th, ignite your dreams of one day racing in the top tiers of NASCAR. Go to www.iracing.com/ignite for full details.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
You are watching the VRS V8 Supercar Online Premier Series here on the iRacing Esports Network. My name is Reese Gardner. Joining me in the commentary box, Bo Albert. Bo, the race that we just had basically everything you could ask for in a race in this series.
Yeah, absolutely. The two different pit stops that the drivers had to do really mixed it up in the middle of the race there, and just trying to figure out who was doing what, and also seeing how the strategy would play out, and eventually climaxing at the ends there with all the different strategies coming together, tire lives, fuel strategies, really made for an exciting race in the end, and lots of passes too, and even the odd 3-wide moment and a bit of bump drafting.
Yeah, certainly. But we are going to hear from the drivers now. Jared Filsell, the first one in here. And Jared, I guess I was saying before, this is pretty much all we could have asked for a return to form. He is he's back now. Jared, why you got to do this to us?
Sorry, I've got this weird Discord bug where I can see you guys talking and I'm not hearing anything, so I just had to do a quick refresh.
Ah, I see. Fair enough. Well, that victory of yours, I think you must certainly be happy with, and it seems like a return to form, if anything.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, no, Monza's been a happy hunting ground for me. I think I'm having quite a few victories in the past, so really capitalising on a strong track for myself was the key. Just get out in front and basically run my own race. Just don't want to get caught up in all the shenanigans back in the pack, but that was just the focus, just get out in front and run my own race.
Well, from all of that, I think with your main championship rival, Ethan Griggolt, finishing in third place, it's certainly a position that you'd love to be in getting into the Enduros.
Yeah, definitely. Enduros have come around pretty bloody quick, to be honest. It'll be definitely some interesting races coming up. 2 tracks that we haven't been to before for endurance events. So that should be good fun. But I wouldn't be throwing Madison under the bus too soon, because one of our teammates did. If the championship ended last round, there was only like 10 points in it between 3 of us or something. So the championship is closer than everyone thinks. Just need to calculate those drops.
Yeah, certainly. The championship is very, very close up the front. But coming into the Enduros, you and Josh Muggleton. Josh had a few issues in this race, dropping 8th at the very end. But I suppose, with him as your partner for the Enduros, it's definitely a good pairing because Josh has lost none of his outright pace.
Yeah, definitely. Just goes to show you can be away from the sim or the service for, I don't even know how long away he was away for, but he's basically fit back in and picked up from where he left off. But it's definitely a good race from him tonight. Definitely needed to keep his nose clean in terms of penalty points, and he's done that. So we were a good combo last year, so we'll look forward to hitting the track together the next round.
Excellent stuff. Before we let you go, Jared, who would you like to thank?
I'd like to thank the teammates at TTR for just grinding out 3 setups this week, just to suit everyone. So I'd like to thank them, as well as Brock and Harrop, as well as Bryce and Dean in the background helping me out during the week as well. They definitely a big help, so can't thank them enough.
Excellent stuff. Jared Filsell, your race winner and maintaining the championship lead there. Bo, the next driver we've got in the commentary box is our 2nd place finisher, Madison Down.
Yep, absolutely. Madison with another great drive, finishing in P number 2 from 2nd on the grid. It was a very tight qualifying with Ian, but eventually by 1,000th getting the better on the front row. But the start looked a little bit tough for you, Madison. You were initially in the draft of Jared, but just weren't able to hold it on. Do you think there was more in the cards today, or do you think you got the most out of it?
Yeah, look, I just don't think we had the pace for Jared today. I went a slightly different setup direction. I stuck with the VRS setup direction and only made a few changes from that set. Jared went a bit of a different direction from there. And yeah, he just had that little bit extra. I'm not sure what it was. To be honest, I think it was mainly down to driver, which is hard to take and hard to admit. But yeah, his his tyre life was probably the thing where he really excelled, because even in the second and third stint, when I had fresher tyres, I had the pace over him for probably 5-6 laps. But once I got to the middle of the stint, it was where he really started to drive away. So yeah, it was disappointing I couldn't stick with him in that first stint, and even though I had the draft, he still was able to pull away. So no, great drive by Jared. Honestly, he brained everybody tonight. He absolutely flogged us, and yeah, it was a pretty boring race from where I sat. I was just watching Jared get further and further away, and I had the pace over everybody else. So yeah, it was kind of in no man's land there.
Well, the strategies did help you from time to time with not being so much in no man's land, and did have a little bit of pressure from Ethan Gregor at one phase in the race. Was there any risk there, or were you just comfortable to run your own race, knowing that eventually you would be able to make the move work?
Yeah, I was pretty comfortable through all those middle parts of the race. I obviously ran very long in the first stint and fairly long in the second stint, but I pretty much knew where the strategy was going to play out, and I was pretty comfortable that I was going to come out in second. But all I was really trying to do was just I knew pretty much whatever strategy I went, I was going to finish that P2. I was just trying to always make sure that I had fresher tyres on the car than Jared in case of a safety car, and hopefully I was going to be able to use a safety car if one came to try and heap the pressure on him a little bit more. That was really the only chance I had to beat him, but that never eventuated. So I just took a little bit of a strategy risk, and yeah, it put me down the field a little bit after that first stop, and I had to pass Ethan and Jake. But yeah, it was just the strategy I opted for, and I knew it wasn't going to hurt me too badly.
Well, at the end of 44 laps, there were no safety cars, but in the Endurance Series, there's a lot more laps to get that safety car. Are you looking forward to the Enduro, and what do you think your chances are heading towards it?
Yeah, look, I think the Enduros will be good. Bit of a mix-up, so obviously a lot more chance for safety cars there. Very, very long races. A few tough tracks we're visiting as well, especially Bathurst, clearly. So yeah, a lot of stuff happens in those Enduros that you're not expecting. So no, it'll be good. I think those rounds of the championship will be fantastic, and interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, you place a lot of trust in the co-driver, and obviously from our point of view, you just got to do the best you can, and try and not let your teammates down. So the benefit for us is we've got very, very strong drivers in the team, mostly finishing in the top 20 tonight. So no, endurance should be good for us. So no, bring it on.
Well, fantastic. Before we let you go, is there anyone you'd like to thank from the team?
Oh, just everyone in the team for all the setup work they do. We went 3 different setup directions and we all went our own ways, but in the end, you're all always bouncing information off each other, which is great. And you can see tonight the results that yielded for the team. So thanks to everyone at TTR, but big thanks to Fuel Auto Tech, Momo Australia as well. Nice to have them up there on the podium yet again.
Well, fantastic. That was second place Madison Down, bringing off another great result race.
Yeah, certainly. And now I'm here with fourth place finisher Forzan El Nabi. Forzan, coming off your win at Interlagos and backing it up with a fourth place at Monza. This was a pretty good event from your perspective, certainly.
Yeah, cheers, boys. Yeah, it was a decent result at the end. Yeah, the race was kind of uneventful at times, but yeah, going into Enduros, it's good to have a bit of form, and it's good to come off a nice result when it's not endurance round. So yeah, it's something to look forward and to look onto, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with the result tonight.
Certainly. From qualifying, we were noticing that there were plenty of efforts to try and get Ross Rizzo further up the field, but it just didn't seem to work. Was the track not in a good state at the end of that session?
Yeah, well, as you guys may know, it always dies off after the first lap or so. So yeah, I tried to give him a bit of a draft here and there, but yeah, he didn't really improve. But with his result tonight, yeah, I'm just stoked for him. He was able to get a good result tonight either way, and yeah, it's good for both me and him to get good results just on the back of Enduro round. So yeah, it's pretty good.
Well, coming into the Enduros, Trick Sim Sports seems very well poised to do incredibly well. You guys obviously have the strategy game locked down, as we've seen from your exploits in other series, and you've both got the pace in the V8 to succeed in this field. So looking forward, I suppose you and Ross definitely have much more than a fighting chance.
Yeah. Since I've joined the team, obviously I've spent a lot of time with Ross, and yeah, he's always on his toes with strategy and stuff. So yeah, it's always good to have someone like him around, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to partnering up with him come Enduro round. So yeah, it's going to be something to look forward to for sure.
Well, before we let you go, Forzan, any shout outs?
Yeah, just big shout out to my team, just all the boys at Trick, and like to thank our sponsors, Trick Custom Fabrications and Night Rider Designs, and yeah, just also a big shout out to Jared, of course. He absolutely creamed everyone tonight. So yeah, just a big congratulations and well done to him. So yeah, no, it's all good. And yeah, just a big thank you to the V8s Online team and the broadcast team and you guys as well for the commentary. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you very much for joining us, Forzan. Bo, for our actually, Bo, we have our third place finisher now. Ian, sorry, my mistake. Completely messed that up. My apologies. You have Brady Myers.
Yeah, well, Brady was definitely a driver involved in a lot of the action tonight, and especially in that first stint when it came to fighting with in Maloney and the rest of the field. That looked like a really exciting start to the race for you, Brady.
Yeah, it definitely was. First lap was on for young and old.
Yeah, absolutely was, and a lot of different strategy calls you guys had to make. And did you find it tough to go with a certain strategy, considering that a lot of drivers were coming in early to the pits or going a lot later? Was it hard to find that balance of when you wanted to pit for the undercut?
Yeah, absolutely. We were tossing up the notion of, there being a safety car thrown in the middle somewhere. So we had to sort of land in and between that. But I think we played our strategy quite well tonight.
Yeah, well, you absolutely did, recording a top 5 in the end, but it wasn't without a bit of pressure from your friend in Sam Blacklock. He was putting a bit of pressure in the middle and final stints of the race. Was there any moment in that battle when you were fuel saving that you thought for going for a move and just getting one up the inside of him just for a bit of bounce between you guys?
Yeah, I was thinking about it a few times, but I was just thinking the long-term strategy. Yeah, didn't think it was the right time to throw one up the inside anyway.
That's fair enough. But in the end, it was a great result. P number 5, but you are heading towards the next, and it will be your first endurance series in the colors of TTL Esports. And do you know who you'll be driving in the Enduros with? And are you looking at your thoughts on results you can expect from those races?
Yeah, definitely looking forward to the Enduros. I love this time of the year. As far as who I'm driving with, I haven't thought about it or don't know who I'm driving with, so we'll have to have a chat about that. But hopefully, if things go our way, we get some luck, maybe top 5 again, or a podium would be awesome.
Well, there we go. A podium is the sights Brady is going to be setting it on. But Brady, before we let you go, is there anyone from TTL you'd like?
Yeah, I'd just like to give a big shout out to the TTL guys. They did a great job in giving me counselling and telling me when and where to go. And also like to thank Down Under Graphics, Hyper Stimulator, Asher Racing, and TTL Driver Academy.
Well, fantastic. That was Brady Myers from TTL Esports, who walks away from tonight with another brilliant top 5.
He certainly does. And that is going to bring to an end our proceedings tonight. Bo, that round, I mean, the perfect springboard for the Enduros, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Enduros are one of the most loved times in the SCOPS calendar. It really shakes the championship up. You get different, formats with the drivers, having to work together, the co-driver swaps. When do you want to play that strategy? And also the longer races in general. It's always a fascinating time of the season, and it's just around the corner. So I say bring it on.
Yes, indeed. Make sure to keep up with everything by liking V8 Supercar Online Premier Series on Facebook. Also, like us on Facebook at V8s Online and on Twitter as well. Subscribe to us on YouTube as well, because we provide quite a few broadcasts in the Australia-New Zealand iRacing community, and there's always some pretty fun racing and some drama to be had. We want to thank you all for joining us tonight for this presentation. My name is Reese Gardner. Joining me was Bo Albert, Jay Kennedy, directing. Thank you very much, everyone, and we will see you next time for the next round of the Virtual Racing School V8 Supercar Online Premier Series.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.